It's time to watch our Time Lord sit in his time craft surrounded by timepieces and read The Time Machine as we review Doctor Who the movie Another Time. Written by Matthew Jacobs, directed by Jeffrey Sachs, and starring Paul McGann, Eric Roberts, and Daphne Ashbrook.
Okay.
Welcome, humans, half-humans, and non-humans, to the 47th production of an Unearthly podcast featuring the 1996 TV movie that my poor choice of inflection made sound as if it had the title Another Time, recording on the 21st of February 2014. I am the Man in Black, and as always with me are Mad Matt.
Hello.
And Ron San.
Always a pleasure.
Joining us today is special guest Romeo Moon of Lounge Leads.
Hello.
Which can be found on blip.tv/loungel33ts, all one word. As always, an Unearthly podcast can be followed on twitch.tv/madmat2185, youtube.com/madmatinc1, and on Facebook and Twitter. In the news, Ninth Doctor Christopher Eccleston had his 50th birthday on Sunday the 16th, and Jeremy Bulloch of the Space Museum, The Time Warrior, and some other sci-fi franchise had his 69th on the same day.
So, apparently Sunday's a big day for sci-fi actors.
Yes, so. 50 years ago tomorrow, the first episode of Marco Polo aired, which would continue until the 4th of April. And that's about all for the news.
It's been a quiet week from Lake Cardiff. Just saying. No new big announcements or scandals or anything else.
Just a little floating things that were just like, do we really care? Not really.
They haven't even posted a new way to make us think that the new season will be like Classic Who, which I think is the first week that they haven't done such.
We haven't seen any more filming on location pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't heard any more, it'll be good! It'll be good! Oh, please be good!
You get the idea that Moffat may have his neck on the chopping axe?
Just a bit. And he kind of deserves it.
He does. You know, because
he's gotten too
he
big
has
for
so
his
much
britches.
potential, because he's written very good, yet he continues to churn out crap every time he's rushed.
Before we go much farther, some of you in the audience might be wondering why we're talking about something that you might have heard us talk about before. Others of you might be wondering why I said Another Time in the opening bumper. Essentially, we did do a stream on this movie several months ago. However, it was
Is this the
pretty much
second or
lost.
third time we've done
I
it?
think this is the third time
It
we've tried
might
to do
be
it.
the third.
Because I think the first one was lost because of an error in the coding.
Of software.
Yeah, I think
because
it's
of
technical
software.
issues.
And
Yeah, I
then
think
the
that was lost
internet
because
ate
of
our
fraps and such.
and then the internet ate our second one.
Right.
Yeah, before it
So
gets
this
put
is-
to YouTube.
This is take
This is-
3.
Right. This is going to be the first time it gets to YouTube, and that is part of why we are glad that Aaron is here with us today.
I was
Back
actually just
recording this?
I was just going to say, Matt, did you change your description on Twitch?
Yeah,
It still
I
says-
did tell it to update.
It's still here. Let me see here. I'll update my feed here.
Yeah, it's updated.
There we go. Good.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I got it.
didn't mean to scare anyone.
I know I clicked the button. I told it.
It's Twitch. You never know.
We don't need another angry person coming in here expecting me to play Rust and going, "You suck. You're not playing the game."
Yeah, we've
That
had that
actually
happen
happened to
before.
you, Matt?
That actually happened to us a couple months back. I think it was saying that I was playing something. I forget what it was. Terraria. I think it was saying
That's
that I
right.
was
Yeah, it
playing
was
Terraria.
Terraria.
And someone came in and went, "You're not playing Terraria. Tell your thing to tell you to say that you're not playing Terraria. You suck." And instantly left again.
Yeah.
Dope.
It's like, oh, oops, sorry.
Thanks, Captain Obvious.
Yeah, he didn't need to go as far as "you suck," but well, thanks for letting me know.
All right.
Hey, abusive people. They exist.
The internet.
So
Isn't everyone an abusive person?
I try not to be. Although I have
I-
said some very nasty things on fanfiction.net before, but to be honest, the people that did it really, really deserved it. I'm sorry if you post a story that consists of one long, uninterrupted sentence. I will come down on you like the hand of God.
I've heard over the last
What-
couple of weeks about movie boxes that are just
What-
nothing but one sentence on the back.
what if it's a first person story from an anime character that actually thinks and speaks that way?
Even so, what you need to do is you need to change spacing.
Welcome
And
to
even
Zero
they have to
Punctuation,
take a
the
breath on
fanfiction.
occasion. Even Excel had to take a break on occasion. And
Yahtzee
she's the
doesn't.
one that talks so fast the English translator's voice burned out trying to do it. They had to replace her about 2/3 of the way through the series.
And the replacement wasn't that good, as I recall.
I don't remember. But we're not here to review that.
Yeah.
This is true. I
There's a
seem
field
to.
I haven't gone into yet, anime reviews.
Oh boy.
I'm in it.
Yeah. I vaguely recall that I think Aaron had some first experiences with the movie or some such you wanted to discuss. Something like
Yes.
that.
I actually do remember picking up this movie from. It was actually a bootleg VHS copy that I picked up from Gen Con, and I think it was actually the 2000 Gen Con in Milwaukee. I remember because Anthony Daniels was there.
Is that the last
got-
Gen Con in Milwaukee?
No, that was 2002.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the third from last.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. I know I missed a couple of them, which annoyed the crap out of me. I might have actually been at that one.
Yeah, I picked up this VHS along with The Curse of Fatal Death, not really knowing what it was. I thought it was I thought it was an actual episode. I'm like, I've never heard this story arc before. I wonder if it's one of the lost episodes.
Yeah, right.
It was great though once we did throw it in. So
And then you watch the master fall through the floor, come back a couple centuries later, and smelling nastier.
yeah, I also remember when this movie premiered on TV. Watched it with my family, with my brother and my mom, because we all used to watch Doctor Who on PBS. Especially with Colin Baker, Tom Baker, Peter Davison.
I
I said
think
all of those out of order, but
I think I very
it.
vaguely remember commercials for this movie, but I never got a chance to see it.
I never quite forgot the disappointment. Even though I didn't get a chance to watch it for the podcast here or rewatch it. But yeah, it's kind of hard to forget how disappointed I was in the movie.
Like I said, I recorded it, and for the longest time in my group, I was the only one that had a recording of it.
Then the internet.
Then until the internet, yes. But I had the VHS I recorded off of Fox the day it aired, and one of my friends, who is still my friend today, had also tried taping it, but his tape cut out about 3/4 of the way through it. So for years, until he discovered I had a copy, by the way, Matt and Aaron, this is Bob, by the way, that I'm talking about.
Oh,
It gets to the point where they're at the climax of it, and he's watching the universe explode, and it's like, you gotta have some idea. And he goes, wait, 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 wait. Tape ended. So he never saw the final quarter of the movie.
That's as awesome as the time we were watching Princess Bride, and the DVD we were watching on the player skipped to where he was stabbed in the stomach. I can't remember the character's name. Sorry. But he was stabbed in the stomach and then skipped to the credits.
Awesome.
That's not how it ends. That's not how it ends at all.
So,
It's a great way to
Randy,
end it.
were you also the one person who had a copy of the Star Wars Holiday Special?
No, I was not. That was somebody else.
I think that was someone else at Anime Club, actually. Yeah.
I didn't get a copy of the holiday special until the internet.
I still don't have my own copy of that thing, although I should
Yeah, I don't
one
think
of
I
these
have one
days.
anymore either. You all must have that just so George Lucas can't say he killed the last one.
Right.
Even though I love the fact that Red Letter Media sent a fake George Lucas over to, I think it was Comic-Con, and had the fake George Lucas walking around the place trying to find all the copies he could of the holiday special, just so that the guy, still in character, could take the DVD, place it on the ground, and start stomping on it.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold it past that. He hates that special. But no, Doctor Who was my thing. I had several, probably I would say a half dozen tapes that were full of old Doctor Who serials. And so I kind of had the pass around to my friends. I know a couple years ago, Bob gave me back a tape I had loaned him apparently in 1998.
Jeez.
I'm just like, wow. Yeah, it's like I was cleaning out the upstairs bedroom and I found this. I'm like, wow.
Speaking of finding things, Randy.
The tape is now traveling on its own and has its own companions.
The tape now has its own little blue box to go inside of.
Most of my VHS Doctor Who was given to a friend, now an ex-friend of mine, back when I moved over to DVD, when my last VHS player burned out. Because at that point it was just like, what's the point of having all this stuff I can't watch?
I'm so angry that I bought a Star Trek VHS box set, and then when I finally went to watch the one movie in the box set that I had never seen because the old box set I had previously had was purchased before movie 6 came out, our VCR is apparently at least halfway to dead now. You can't fix the tracking, so you can only pretty much watch half the screen. So I pretty much bought that box set for nothing unless I buy a new VCR.
I believe I got the entire OVA series of Record of Lost War 2 years ago. Got through the first tape, was about to start the second one when the VCR just completely went kaput.
See, I'm glad Eli or no one his age is here. We'd have to explain what a VCR was.
Are we old?
Or try explaining Laserdisc.
Oh.
My second to last VCR.
I've never owned those.
My Uncle Glenn owned one of those. I didn't.
My parents actually ask me every once in a while if I know what a Laserdisc is, and I'm like, yeah, I figured it out eventually.
I'm not surprised my Uncle Glenn had a Laserdisc. He ran a TV store. So, yeah, he would have that kind of stuff. But no, my second to last VCR had this annoying capacity to eat tapes. And I mean, you'd finally pull them out, and the tape would be all crinkled and stuff. You're just like, oh, screw this. And then my last one that I got before I finally stopped trying to get new VCRs, decided it only wanted to record 5 minutes of any half-hour show.
Wonderful.
And
yeah,
I almost wasn't going to say this until I realized that it actually ties into a little bit into the movie we're discussing. Was anybody here that one person in the family that could actually program the time on the VCR?
Yes.
I was.
We were all the only people that could get the time to work on those things. Huh?
Yeah. To be honest, it was an obsessive-compulsive thing with me.
Exactly,
yeah. Me too.
Yeah.
I had to have them.
Yeah.
Have it right,
ahead.
dang it.
Yeah, I had a habit of recording TV shows like cartoons that were on that I knew weren't available on VHS tape. For example, Tales of Young Love's Shoots, which is an anime version of Little Women that Miyazaki worked on. That was actually on the Inspiration Network, so I was recording that along with Gargoyles and Here Come the Littles. So yeah.
I'm trying to think.
Both the latter two are actually on DVD now. Anyway, if I see a clock flashing 12, I have to
Yes.
set it.
Yeah.
It
Exactly.
will sit
Yeah,
there
that's
and
what it was
just
for me, too.
stare at me. I will become distracted. I will not be able to do anything until I learn how to set that clock.
Well, I can't remember why. I think it might have been when we were painting our house at the time. But I remember nights where I slept in it was essentially not, well, I guess you'd call it a den, and there was a TV with a VCR in there, and I would just sit there at night like I can't sleep with this flashing 12 at me, so I just messed around with it until I could program the time.
Yeah, it's that bad with me. Yeah, I couldn't sleep if it was doing it either. Because every time I would literally hear it flash.
I believe my first encounters with trying to use VCRs and actually having my own tapes, I think I actually started with Pokemon. From Pokemon, it graduated up to movies, and from movies, it graduated to recording episodes of Mystery Science Theater.
A little bit of a late bloomer there, Matt.
Huh?
I was. When did Pokemon start?
Pokemon started, I want to say, around
97,
7th or 8th grade for me.
97, 98, somewhere in there. And at that point, I was already contemplating making the transition to DVD, and I would do it 2 years later.
You see, you gotta remember, Randy. I'm even though we're
sure?
not
Because
young, any of us are not young here. I'm still younger than almost all of you except for Bill.
I had never heard of a DVD until like 2000 or so.
The first DVD I bought was in 96, 97.
I didn't get one until around 2000 myself, so
Yeah, I didn't. We only got our DVD player through a raffle. My mom won a three disc changer, and the first DVD I ran out and bought was Clerks, the animated series.
My first DVD was the Resident Evil movie.
First DVD I owned was Escape from LA.
Oh, lucky dog.
First DVD I owned, I think, was Spider-Man. And the first DVD player I owned was the PlayStation 2.
Actually, I think the
by
first
the way,
time I
I
heard about DVD players was when I got
DVD
the
players were
D&D
expensive
movie
back
on
then,
VHS.
Yep, I remember I got Escape from LA as soon as it came out on DVD. I was just like, yes! Must watch again. And I would watch it repeatedly. And I was glad when the Star Trek movies came out on DVD because I had to keep replacing those on VHS. I would literally wear out Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 6 to the point the tape would no longer play.
I still can't believe I went all those years without knowing Star Trek 6 existed. For so long, I thought Generations was number 6.
Oh wow! I actually saw number 6 in the movie theater.
So did I.
That's also because
Gildale
my entire childhood I grew up with a complete box set which had 1 through 5 because 6 hadn't come out yet by the time it was bought. And by the time, so I grew up watching those 5 movies thinking they were all of the Star Trek original series movies.
Nice. No, I remember my mother and I would go see, because the Star Trek movies traditionally came out during the classic era Thanksgiving weekend. So my mother and I would go to the Hilldale Theater and watch them when they came out. There's a Target where that theater used to be now.
Oh yeah.
That's where they built the
Hilldale
Target.
Target now. I love that Target.
I actually do miss the theater a little.
Just a wee bit.
Just because of nostalgia, I think.
Also,
Oh my God, I just remembered. I just remembered now. I'm sorry, it just dawned on me now. Tomorrow I'm going to go see the new RoboCop movie.
I have heard so many bad things about that.
I've heard lots of yin and yang.
I've heard a lot of good things.
Mm-hmm.
Really,
I've heard
I've heard they completely missed the the satiric humor that was in
They
the
got a bit of the idea of it, but they didn't nail it as good as they should have. Is what I've been hearing.
From what I understand, they completely made it their own because they knew they couldn't live up to the original and succeeded at making it their own.
Yeah, but did they do it with their own brand of humor, or are they playing it completely straight? Is my question.
They're from what I understood, they're kind of taking digs on like Fox News, etc. They're essentially mocking the quote-unquote news that we supposedly get mass-fed these days.
I saw the Midnight Review with Brad.
I've not seen that. I should actually go see that too.
And he and the people he went with were just, they felt like the hate towards the film was just so overblown that it wasn't worth hating that much. And they actually did quite a few things right, as well as they didn't quite live up to the original, but it was nowhere near as bad as what people were saying.
All of my friends who've seen it enjoyed it. I saw one person give it a 9 out of 10, but then again, he's also a very optimistic, positive person, so I generally take his positive reviews with a grain of salt and assume it's about 2 points lower.
I was originally going to take Aaron to go see it on Valentine's Day, but my car hasn't worked since about the beginning of the month.
No.
Well, my friend since 6th grade is coming over tomorrow. We're going to sit here in my place and watch the original, and then we're going to go to the theaters and see the new one.
Are you sure you want to do that? Because
I want to see his reaction to the twist.
Watching the original thing after the prequel was probably the best decision I've ever made watching a remake or prequel. Because if I had watched the original thing and then the prequel, I would not have enjoyed my theatrical experience nearly as much.
I can guarantee you we've both seen worse in theaters. We both saw The Village.
The Village was a great comedy, just like After Earth. They're both great comedies.
Bill, we did not know it was a comedy at the time. We were taking this thing fully serious, and we were pissed when we were done.
I've got to say, I remember when The Village came out, watching the commercials for it. I'm like, wow, I need to see that. That sounds like the best new horror movie ever.
And it's a triping piece of shit.
It is really not.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I generally don't go to see a movie unless I know it's good. I will wait and see it on reruns on, back when I used to have HBO, it'd be like when it came out on HBO. But now it's just wait till it comes out on Netflix.
To quote something that I've said to Izio before, why would you only want to see good movies? Why not intentionally go to see the terrible ones?
Because I don't want to pay to see it.
Besides, hon, I'd like to go see the Lego movie with you. Yes,
I've heard
Lego
a lot
movie.
of that.
Come on.
If we go to see that, honey, you have to pay for us.
I will. Deanna's already seen it. She says it's really cute.
I've been hearing it's really good too, so...
I've heard a lot of good things from a very wide group of people about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Lego movie and or Frozen.
Yeah, there's a few things that are coming out I will eventually want to see, but yeah. No, the last bad movie I saw
Smurfs 2?
No, I didn't go see that. I'm not that dumb. I knew I didn't see the first one. I had no.
You don't have to. It's essentially the first one again.
No.
But with goth Smurfs.
Oh, you know what? You know what bad movie I hope is still in theaters that I still want to pay money to see? I, Frankenstein.
Oh yes, I would like to go see that one too.
I've heard that one's cheese-tastic.
Yes.
It's from the makers of Underworld, for God's sake. How can you not love it?
My problem is I only have a finite amount of money that I can spend on on movies every year. And if I'm only spending a finite amount of money, I'm going to go see the ones that are really good, like, the Marvel movies.
I just got my tax return in.
Speaking of movies that aren't really good, you know the one thing we haven't talked about?
Oh!
Probably the one that we should be talking about.
Thank you for getting us back on the topic. This just turned into a casual conversation.
About movies. And VHS tapes, which are actually sort of pseudo fun
Good thing I
topic.
wasn't trying to do this in accent tonight. I probably would have lost it. So yes, Doctor Who, the American movie, 1996.
So what part of it do we want to talk about first? Because there are so many.
Oh
The
God,
American? Oh god, the
it's
American.
it. You know, the scary part is there are parts of this movie that are spot on correct, and then there are parts of this movie that are so totally, completely, and utterly wrong.
Yes.
I mean, you know, you start the movie. First of all, you've got him being killed by the Daleks, which is wrong because the Daleks would just have killed the Master flat out and not really negotiated, left his corpse to rot.
They would have incinerated his corpse.
Yes. And if a Dalek could have been able to, they would have pissed on the remains.
Or shove it up his butt, either way. Yoo-hoo.
But, so, you know, first of all, so the fact that they actually gave a trial and then publicly executed and offered to have his remains returned to Gallifrey did not set off red flags on the Doctor. It's a plot! It's a trap!
Trap!
It's a plot,
And then-
Harry Potter.
but then you
Plot.
see-
The most terrible things happen.
Then you see the Doctor sitting down in what is the best freaking console room ever,
Yes.
other than the clocks, which is just like really hammering it home. Hey, Time Lord, look at all these clocks.
Who complained about that console room in Light at the End? I forget which Doctor.
I don't know.
I don't remember.
I
Yeah,
can't
it's been
remember
a
which
while.
it was. Maybe it was.
But-
Maybe it was Tom.
I
I'm
don't
thinking
know.
it might have been
It was.
Tom.
It is one of the coolest, most extravagant console rooms we'd ever seen. He sits down and is reading
Surrounded
a
by-
time machine, which is again hammering home Time Lord. But also, if you know the continuity, you know he inspired the freaking book in what is one of the not so great episodes of the Sixth Doctor era, Time Lash, where H.G. Wells actually catches a ride on the TARDIS.
But you know.
But he's also listening to essentially smooth jazz, which is spot on correct. It is established, I believe, in Silver Nemesis that the Seventh Doctor has a soft spot for smooth jazz.
And other musical ideas at the time. And I believe he's also a fan of rock.
He's also eating jelly babies, which really wasn't the Seventh Doctor's thing. So, really was kind of a distillation of the Doctor there.
Yeah, it's
Speaking
Jelly
of
Baby seems
Silver
to be an
Nemesis,
on and off thing.
you know something this movie gets right that episode doesn't? The gold is dust.
Yes, the gold dust is beautifully placed in there. I love the fact that he has it because it's A, means the
Yes.
Doctor's prepared, and B, is a reference to how you actually freaking kill the Cybermen.
And he's not chucking coins at them.
Correct. So they got that right.
Or rubbing gold tickets on them.
Gold tickets.
So then they get down to the Master in a thing. They bring out the old classic sonic screwdriver, and all of the equipment was direct out of the Doctor Who technical manual from 1978. I know I have a copy of those books. I recognized every piece of equipment in his toolbox. I was just like, yes!
But Sylvester McCoy did not know the proper way to hold the screwdriver.
I forgot to check for the blurring. Because, you know, they digitally blurred the end of the screwdriver because he was holding it wrong way round.
Right.
I forgot to check for that when I was looking. I was looking for other things. But, well, yeah, he never had held a screwdriver before.
Right.
I remember somebody offered a variety of screwdrivers to Colin Baker and went, which is your screwdriver? And he had to admit that none of them were his because he's the only Doctor not to use one ever.
Oh yeah, because the seventh used it literally once.
Literally once, and then the fifth had it for like the first season and a half, I think.
The Visitation. How far in was that? That was after Earthshock, so yeah.
No, the visitation? That was before
Wasn't it?
Earthshock.
It was before
Yeah, but it was
Earthshock?
shortly.
Because Adric was in it.
Shortly
Okay,
before
so-
Earthshock, though.
Midway through his first season, then, or about that.
Yeah, something in there. Technically, the first Doctor's never held one either.
Technically,
True.
yeah.
But he's not alive, so you can't ask him, which is your screwdriver. Regardless, so they have that. They have the toolkit, and all of it's right. So they have all those little details right. And then they go on and they start to try to add their own continuity, like the Doctor being half human, and it's like, what the fuck? It's like half the script was written by somebody who knew Doctor Who, and the half of it was written by Tommy Chong. Hey, man, I watched a lot of this show back in the 60s, man. It was the one with Captain Kirk, right? So, yeah, we're going to make sure we write down the fact that he's half human. And...
Although one thing that they added is something that they pretty much, that Russell T Davies did kind of pick up on, which was him kind of being able to see someone's past and future and everything else all at once.
Yeah, that had never been part of the show before that, and it's been kind of added to the continuity. This is also the first appearance, mentioning the console room, of the TARDIS console, the center column, the time rotor as it's called, going floor to ceiling. Something that has been kept in the new series.
Right. I think it's the first time of an Eye of Harmony being inside the TARDIS as well, isn't it?
Yes, and that has been kept in the new series, in the worst episode ever made. But I don't mind it. I didn't mind the fact that he had it. It was part of continuity. I didn't mind that. It's other parts of that episode I don't like.
There are other parts, but also the Eye of Harmony, last time I checked, didn't look anything like that.
Yeah, well, again, new series, new special effects. I can live with that, Matt.
Right. He changed the background on the Eye of Harmony room.
Yeah, I mean, even if you look at the movie compared to the classic series, Cloister Room changed, console room changed. I mean, apparently he had gone out of his question mark era and was now using the seal of Rassilon as his personal emblem.
Apparently,
I wonder what the Lord President thought of that.
Right.
Because that's the seal of the President of the High Council of Time Lords.
Who is the Lord President at this point? It's not Romana, is it? Not
it would
yet.
be Flavia.
Maybe it is. It's either her or Flavia, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be Flavia or Romana.
It's gotta be one of those
Unless
two.
there was an intermediary president.
Oh. Maybe that's it. Maybe it was Romana, and she gave him let him use the seal as a dignitary or something.
Maybe.
So it's
That would
like
be
the
interesting.
skull and crossbones to Captain Harlock. Only him and Queen Emeraldus are allowed to use it, apparently.
In this case, the Doctor and Romana, which even hints even more to a possible relationship between those two.
Well, I still say that the commercials are canon and therefore they're married.
So technically, then, does that mean that when the Doctor married River Song, it would have been polygamy?
Well, considering in New Who, the Doctor's been married at least 3 times, so yes.
That's very true.
He
Man, the
has,
Queen.
he has flings,
Yeah.
apparently.
Because
He's married the Queen. He's married to what? Marilyn Monroe, was it?
Yeah, he married
Yes.
Marilyn Monroe.
Although that was obviously against his will.
He probably thought she was a Zygon.
Or an imitator or something. I don't know.
Actually,
I'm not
I remember
sure
him
what
being
was
quite
going
blitzed
through
and just saying, "Hey, Marilyn, yeah, let's do it." But okay.
I think because he was quite pissed at his companions. That was in A Christmas Carol, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It might have been, yeah.
Yeah, they really don't go through who the president is at that particular time. It might be, if you go by the books, President Romana, because I'm trying to remember who was the president in Lungbarrow, and I think it was Romana at the time.
So yeah, it would have been Romana then, and yeah.
And I think
Not that
only,
I use Lungbarrow as any form of official reference. That was
and I
crappy.
think the only audio president is Romana, isn't it?
Just about.
Yes, the only audio president is President Romana.
So yeah, I would dub her the unofficially official president of Gallifrey at the time.
I know Russell T Davies did. But we know the fact that as of the Sixth Doctor era, Flavia was president because that was the one that put him on
Right.
trial.
Yeah.
And
So
as
it's
I was
just
talking with Matt about last night, I couldn't see the Doctor so soon after Trial of a Time Lord sporting the seal of Rassilon. But if Romana came back as president, that kind of makes it
It
make
might be
sense.
That would kind of flip things a bit, yeah.
Yeah, it might be
Yeah.
a Go Romana, clean up Gallifrey.
Right.
Because yeah, it was all over the freaking TARDIS. It was
It,
abandoned
and
would
also
be like,
the
here.
question, kind of a
It
sign
would be
that
like,
maybe the
here,
president, Lord President,
you-
also backs him too.
She might have just been like, here, use this. Just get rid of that god awful vest.
Here, take this and burn that jumper.
And the umbrella's okay, but I would do something about the handle.
Yeah, he actually went to the handle he used, I think, in the first season for the movie.
I was going to
Because
say, did he have
that
an
umbrella
umbrella?
was. What's that? I think he came out with it. I know
Okay.
it wasn't in his things. He may not have actually had one,
Right.
which again is really kind of
I
missing.
feel
the
like if
McCoy.
Sylvester McCoy, I feel like if Sylvester McCoy was being shot at while holding an umbrella, it would have been like, I don't know, like a Batman Penguin thing where he like used it as a shield.
Considering I've been playing Arkham Origins, Bill, please. Oh, frustrating game. Anyway. Anyway, no, it's the fact that he's missing so much of his wardrobe in there that was iconic. That umbrella, by the way, was a gift from a fan.
Yes, but I think
Yeah.
at this point he had already changed in the novels, so you can argue that they wanted
I
to
don't mind the
maintain
change
that.
from the horrible jumper,
Mhm.
but I thought he would have kept the hat and the umbrella.
They had to
Not
conceal-
necessarily the
Um,
question mark umbrella, but just having an umbrella.
Yeah,
for,
just having
for
an
the
umbrella,
novels,
period.
did he wear a hat? Do you know, like in the
Yes.
covers or anything? Okay.
Yes, he did. They generally had him in the hat. And I
Usually
thought
have
he
him.
had the hat when he came out of the TARDIS and was gunned down.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
I recall him. I recall him. Actually, I remember him turning around and closing the doors as he was putting on the hat, and then he got
Mhm.
shot.
Yeah, I just didn't remember if he had the umbrella in his hand either.
I can't remember if
He
he had
might
the umbrella
have.
or not. He might have.
Oh, speaking of him being gunned down, I was just going to add this. This isn't really match exactly into what we're saying, but it's as good a point as any to mention it. This does fit into our string of Doctor's last episodes. Not entirely because Sylvester
It's-
McCoy is not in the entirety of this movie, but
He's
for
in
example,
here for 21 minutes. I actually timed it.
if you watch this as a 3.5 episode serial, the first episode's cliffhanger is the regeneration.
It's actually him coming
Or it's
out. of
right
the morgue.
around it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Him coming out of the morgue is
The-
probably closer.
Yeah, the regeneration's
still-
more or less on the 21-minute mark.
Right.
And generally
And then it's alive. It's alive.
is at the 23-minute mark, so the 25-minute mark would have been further down. But had this been made into half-hour serials, they would have stretched out something in there to have him either come out or regenerate on that mark.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't because it was made as a TV movie.
Mhm.
A movie. A maneuver.
They would have only had to add about 10 to 15 minutes worth of material to make this into a 4-parter.
Yeah, it comes out at 1 minute 25. Also with like the world's shortest like end credits.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, they did kind of
That's-
speak to the end credits on just about every version I've ever seen.
The original Fox broadcast version had a full-length credit. But it's the only time I've seen it with a full-length credit. The one that they use is the BBC credits, which were shortened.
Ah.
I don't know what the difference was. Why they chose to shorten it, I think for time constraints in the BBC, I don't know.
BBC probably aired it without commercials. Fox didn't, so it probably took up an extra 30 minutes or an extra hour on Fox compared to the BBC.
Quite possibly. Oh, by the way, no, he did not have his umbrella when he came out of the TARDIS.
Okay.
Okay.
As
Yeah,
referenced,
see now, because all I'm really picturing if he has that umbrella is him like making a penguin face and like putting the umbrella in front of him and spinning it and catching all the bullets. I think they're around the same height.
Hey,
The little men.
Here's little man.
that's
He's in the Hobbit,
Gandalf's
don't you
friend
know?
you're talking about there.
Yes, he's in the Hobbit, don't you know?
Yes.
He's not a very tall man.
Yes, but he's not a hobbit in The Hobbit.
No. But it was going to be.
But he's got bird poo.
And he drives around on a cart run by squirrels.
Rabbits.
Rabbits.
Giant rats.
Sorry, rabbits.
Rabbits.
Which I still maintain were created by genetic experiments by the Rani.
Funk.
Yeah, you can keep saying that, Bill. You keep saying that, I'm reloading.
I was waiting for you to cut me off in the middle of that sentence, but you didn't.
Nope, keep talking, I'm reloading.
Okay,
We,
I'm loaded.
we've already discussed that you're Ryoga, so you'll be somewhere in South America looking for me.
Probably. I wouldn't... Well, I don't know. Can I help it if I don't know the way to Connecticut? Anyway, so, we didn't actually give a summary of this movie, which we normally do.
Yeah.
Probably because this is the third time we've done it.
Yeah. And because
Does anybody want to quickly give a summary of the movie?
We gave a summary instead of the 90s and of various mediums that you could watch movies on.
Yeah.
I guess I can do a quick one if you really desire.
Quickie summary.
Quickie summary.
Quickie summary.
The seventh Doctor lands in 1999, I believe 2 days before the New Year's?
December 30th, San Francisco.
So the day before the New Year. New Year's Eve. And upon landing, he is shot down by gangsters trying to get at another main character.
Hence this shooting conversation that we just had.
Yes. The Doctor is taken to the hospital. They try to operate on him. They think they're somehow getting a reflective image on his internals, only to find out that he does have two hearts and accidentally kill him. While still in the hospital, he regenerates, although the regeneration almost didn't work because of the sedatives, I believe. Which still triggered a temporary amnesia inside the Doctor upon his transformation. Upon his trying to leave, he actually encounters the Doctor who operated on him, only having vague flashes of memory of her. She takes him back to her house, whereupon she does figure out he does have two hearts. But while they're there, the Doctor remembers now that that there was something going on with the Master, and that the Master must now be loose and is trying to destroy the world. A typical Master day. The Doctor also reveals in a very haphazard way through the Master as well as by himself that he is half human, and by the way, this is completely ignored throughout any other continuity.
Yeah, I believe I've already brought up that fact, the bullshit level of that, but we'll probably talk about it more.
With a little bit of running about, the Doctor also figures out what the Master's plan is, and that he needs an atomic clock to undo the damage that the Master is doing. They manage to find one that's in town, and the Dr. Grace, she happens to be ahead of a group that's actually starting an atomic clock that evening.
She's on the board of trustees.
Board of trustees, that's what I was looking for. I couldn't remember.
Yeah, it just means that she gave them money.
So she's able to get him back there without initial questions right away. Manages to sneak out the atomic clock while also treating one of the staff people to a jelly baby. They manage to get back out, get back to TARDIS. But also during all this, the Master did shoot something at Grace, but it just seemed to be kind of an acid burn. However, when they're about ready to fix the TARDIS, Grace suddenly becomes possessed by the Master and knocks out the Doctor. Uh, Lee, the kid that the gangsters were trying to kill when they accidentally killed the Seventh Doctor, has also been working with the Master throughout most of this. And together
The
with
Asian
Possessed
child.
Grace, they are planning to take all the Doctor's regenerations, give them to the Master, and the Master will then take everyone off the planet before it blows. Upon further deliberation, though, Lee figures out that not only does this whole possession of Grace kind of look a bit fishy, but the Master also admits that he wasted his lives trying to get back at the Doctor. With this, Lee does not want to help the Master anymore. The Master kills him.
Snaps
He
his neck.
unpossesses Grace long enough to force her to open up the Eye of Harmony, and while doing so, still lets Grace live. She manages to fix the TARDIS, close the eye, and the Doctor manages to save himself from having his regeneration stolen from him. But as the Master attacks the Doctor, Grace is also thrown off a ledge and possibly killed. A battle ensues between the Doctor and the Master, leaving the Master being sucked up by the Eye of Harmony. The TARDIS then re-resurrects the two companions, and the Doctor drops them off just as New Year's hits. The end.
Now-
Master dies because when they fight like animals, they will die like animals.
Nice reference there. I take it you've watched that far in the series now, Bill?
I've watched every Seventh Doctor episode. But
Okay, I thought you were
haven't-
saving
That's the
that one.
second one.
Oh no, I watched all the Seventh Doctor as soon as I got the chance to, and then the rest I'm kind of going through whatever strikes me. By the way,
Okay.
I think I found the inspiration for the Master here. Just sent a YouTube link to the chat. Well, not the Twitch chat, the Skype chat.
Just getting warmed up.
Meh.
I don't know. I really think they just looked at the Master's eyes from Survival, from like stock footage, and went, hey, those look like snake eyes, so we'll do a whole snake thing. Not
Right.
realizing they were cat's eyes.
I wonder if they had already known about the hypnotism thing, or if that was just a happy accident.
What? Hypnotism?
The
Oh,
fact
the
that
possession thing? Yeah.
Hypnotize people, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because they did it completely half wrong. They did it completely asinine wrong. I mean, the Master was a master of straight
And
out,
granted,
you know.
if you ignore the fact that he unhypnotized her by kissing her, because that makes some kind of no.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, they did the entire thing asininely wrong. Because before it was, you know, simple, you know, follow the, you know, look into my eyes hypnosis kind of thing.
I'm trying.
I am the master,
remember.
and you will obey me.
There was one part when I was rewatching the movie last night, and I'm just like, oh, that's right, when the Master is trying to convince Lee to be on his side, and I was just like, okay, this is the perfect moment. He's going to say, I am the Master, and you will obey me, and instead he snaps Lee's neck.
Oh yeah, that.
No,
Yeah.
no. Because at that point, he was done with them. He didn't have a further use for Lee. Unlike the John Sims, who decided to start keeping a companion, a wife, around, just to basically make him the anti-doctor.
Hmm.
But no, this one's just like, okay, you served your purpose. You brought me the people. I'm now basically one. And now you're resisting me. Now you die.
I've got to say
Now
that
it would have
when
been more in Master style to pull out a tissue compression eliminator and
Yes.
turn him into doll
yes,
Yes, it would have.
absolutely,
and laughing while the Doctor watches in horror.
everyone in Grace's hospital would have been turned into a doll.
No, it wouldn't have been everyone in Grace's hospital because that one he did fairly undercover.
Yeah,
Would have been
he's still-
everybody in all the security guys that you saw coated in goo in the
Oh, by the atomic clock.
The
Yeah,
Institute?
those guys would have been
Yeah.
shrunk.
those guys would have been dolls.
Well, I've got to say, when the Master started spitting out acid breath, I feel like Paul must have felt at home. He must have been having flashbacks to the last movie he had filmed.
Aliens 3 reference for the audience that doesn't get it.
Oh, yes. That's, by the way, why he had to wear the wig for that, is his hair was still short from filming Aliens 3. Not that that was the greatest role in the world, but hey.
Better Alien 3 than Alien Resurrection.
I disagree. I mean, there are bad parts of Resurrection, but I would take that over 3 any day.
Although I've mentioned this before when we did this before, but one of the interesting notes about this episode is, you know who Paul McGann's agent was at the time he got the offer, don't you?
I remember the conversation, but I don't remember the details.
It was Janet Fielding who played Tegan.
That's right, and she told him not to.
Yes, she told him not to take it because she basically told him to the fact that Doctor Who would ruin his life. He took it anyway. She now is, of course, back on the side of Doctor Who forever.
Yeah, because Big Finish is an awesome place to work right now.
Yeah,
right.
And I really boiled down her bad experience to the fact that John Nathan Turner was an asshat.
And also made sure that her character had the most god-awful time of the TARDIS ever.
That seems to be one of the themes of this podcast. Working for Doctor Who will give you cancer. John Nathan Turner's an asshat.
Stephen Moffat can't write anymore.
Exactly.
Moffat needs to die. Yeah.
Moffat needs to really get detached from the show. Period. He's slowly becoming a pain on the show.
Yeah, he needs they need fresh blood. Really, they need.
And Nick Briggs needs to be in charge of all things Doctor Who.
And Nick Briggs, or God help us if they could get him. Anybody?
Neil
Gaiman, yes, indeed.
Neil.
Oh yes.
I would think that would be the Doctor Who that would, make you go hide under the bed.
It'd be the Doctor Who that puts the entire countryside behind the couch again.
You know that exchange. At the very least, Matt will get this. I'm not sure about anyone else. Where just everyone was like Neil, and my first thought was, "Oh, great, he's foreign. Nice to meet you, Neil."
Aaron should get that.
Okay.
Nice to meet you, Neil.
Let's see. So, something that I don't think ever occurred to me before as I was watching this episode. Where the fuck did Paul McGann get the jelly babies?
Where did he not get the jelly babies?
Hammerspace.
Because, Lee had all of his things.
Not
if
all of his things, and they
babies,
also did. I believe they did visit the TARDIS before they went to the atomic clock, didn't they?
No, they didn't. No, they didn't visit the TARDIS till after they came back. They went. They went from the hospital to Grace's house.
I'm trying to
Grace's house via the ambulance.
Mm-hmm.
Halfway there, ran out of the ambulance during a traffic jam. Got on the police bike, had the lame ass chase of the ambulance and the police bike. Lame ass because both of them were running blues and twos.
The only sensible explanation is that the guy he stole the costume from had them in the pocket.
Or that he found them while paging through all the costumes.
Still really, considering how hard it is to get jelly babies in the continental United States.
Yeah.
I know this
we
because
know
I have
that,
tried.
but do the Brits know that?
I think
that just the fact that he happened to find a bag of jelly babies either at the hospital or at Grace's place.
Maybe it's an as yet undescribed part of the regenerative process.
Is he's able to spontaneously create jelly babies?
If you really, really missed something, it will be there.
He might have just found a wand while he was at the hospital and did Accio jelly babies.
Really? I kind of like the idea that he regenerated them better.
I'm just
Oh, what's this in my robe?
I'm
Oh,
just basically
jelly
calling the bullshit meter, Bill.
Yeah.
That was
Or-
really a sarcastic comment on my part there.
Would you rather I stick with my first explanation of he kept them in hammer space?
That's more preferable to that. But my
Is hammer
question then
space something
becomes,
we need to
why didn't
explain
he
for the
keep his damn
audience, or no?
screwdriver there too?
That's a good point.
Because trust me, the first thing, if I had access to hammer space, I'd be putting in there, if I'm the Doctor, is my sonic screwdriver.
And the
Because
spare
that way they
TARDIS
could
key.
never get rid of my screwdriver.
And I would not keep the spare TARDIS key on the outside of the TARDIS if
It would be
if
in
I had
hammer
access to
space.
that either. Yes.
Besides, if you think about this, do you really want to know where he hid those?
I would also keep a spare change of clothes in every
Matt,
size.
Are you saying he pulled a Captain Jack with the jelly babies?
There's so much of the Doctor and so little of the jelly babies.
I feel so sorry for the two people that ate one now.
The kind of nutty.
Where were you hiding those?
Yes. Yes, I get the Kill Matt
So-
award for the night.
If this movie didn't ruin anybody's childhood enough, take that.
At the time, it didn't ruin it for me. Just because I was so starved for Doctor Who at the time, I would take
Got
anything.
you.
True.
And there were
Like-
a few things that was great. I mean, we all went, that freaking console room was awesome.
I've read articles about how this essentially destroyed Doctor Who for people like in their middle school years. Like that
I'm
had
pretty
grown
sure
up watching
people
it on
who
TV
watched this in their
and
middle
saw
school
this
years
and
didn't know anything
destroyed
about
it.
Doctor Who to begin with.
Well,
It
like
was-
people like Randy who had grown up watching it on TV.
Yeah, for me, like I said, I was so starved for any Doctor Who, and my response was pretty much the same as the British people. It's like, okay, that was okay. Then again, the last thing the British saw was Dimensions in Time.
Yeah. I was pretty disappointed in it, but it's not the worst I've seen of Doctor Who.
Oh hell no!
At this
I
point,
still,
yeah,
I
it's not
still
the
say
worst
Journey
any of
to
us
the
have
Center of
seen
the
Doctor
TARDIS
Who.
wins that award for worst episode ever.
Absolutely.
And that wasn't even made at the time. And I guarantee
Yeah,
you
at
there
the
was
time-
still worse classic Who.
At the time, yeah.
I'd say the Twin Dilemma was probably in the lead there.
We still
Maybe
haven't.
the Verboids could be argued
I'll say
too.
The Twin Dilemma didn't even show up in our vote for worst serials. We should review that sometime. Actually, we will be reviewing that soon.
Well, no,
six
it came
weeks
up.
now?
It came
5
up in
weeks.
honorable mention for me.
Right.
Mhm.
Twin Dilemma came up in honorable mention. It lost to the Gunfighters because I could only choose one.
We'll be reviewing that in late March or early April, actually.
The Twin Dilemma, yeah.
Yeah. I will be prepared for venom on my part. I will hurl acid at that.
Yeah.
Um,
that's not a good
Are you
story.
going to choke it?
I just like to pour salt on it and make it go away. Make it sizzle.
Like they should have done the enemy of that story?
Yes, exactly.
I feel like
Okay.
you could have poured salt on the master in this story, and he might have gone away.
That's a possibility too.
When he wasn't looking like a cobra, he was looking like a slug. That's why I called
Yeah.
him the Yerk. That's why I called him the
I'm-
Yerk Master for so long.
I am not fond of Eric Roberts, particularly as an actor. I am more
He's a
fond
very
of him.
one-note actor, yeah.
This is actually one of my more fond portrayals done by Eric Roberts,
And actually,
which goes to show how much I dislike Eric Roberts in pretty much anything else I've seen. I don't like him for most of this. What really makes me smile is pretty much the end of the movie, after he comes out in the faux Time Lord outfit.
yes.
And he is just hamming it up. He's pulling pretty much a full Jeremy Irons in
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons at this point.
Yes.
He is
Yes, he
just
is.
he is just chewing the scenery, and
Yes,
he's
ju-
great.
Just shy of going.
Although
he's great like
No.
that. I liked
Which-
that.
and he really brings up all of the camp aspects of the Anthony Ainley Doctor. You can see them in this version of the Doctor, all the way up to he's like, and that's the new Doctor. He's so young. Grr.
Yeah,
was like,
but but actually, I understand that one. That his look at that, because he's not thinking of anything sexual. He's thinking of wearing that body.
He's- I was like,
He's looking at a brand new Edgar suit.
so kind of like Yana and Tennant, except one step beyond.
Yeah. It's not even that. I mean, you got to remember, this is the master that has just body snatched 2 bodies.
Yeah.
So he's basically looking at his next snatch. He's
Did
a
they
serial
ever-
snatcher.
Does the Keeper of Traken do anything to explain how he does that, or does he just show up in Legopolis wearing a new body?
He just you see him abduct the other guy with him laughing,
Yeah.
but yeah,
But there's
the
no way
fact
to
that the
explain how it happened at all.
They just
well,
kind
the
of
fact
fused.
that he had the powers of the Keepership, which were pretty much damn near omnipotent.
Ah,
He was essentially a demigod at the time.
no. You should have brought the 7th Doctor in to face him.
So how he's doing it this time, I don't know. All I can think, considering that this time is completely different from that time, it has to be some completely
This
fucked up
time is
ritual.
completely different from anything ever.
Maybe he cut a deal with the Mara.
Maybe he
that might
did,
make
yeah.
that kind of makes sense.
Which will also
would
explain
explain-
why he cut a deal with the Daleks too, because this is a huge planned operation, obviously.
Yeah, it's obviously, the Daleks want the Doctor gone. I mean, that's an
I'm-
obvious, because
I'm-
the Doctor,
I'm kind
the
of- I'm
Doctor's
kind
been
of
a
picturing
pain
a-
in their ass.
I'm kind of picturing a huge meeting of all the Doctor's enemies where the Master is essentially Lex Luthor, and everybody's offering their expertise on how they can help his plan to destroy the Doctor.
I'm sorry, I am now seeing a couple of the old Cartoon Network Legion of Doom shorts. Only with, like, John Sims at the top, because I'm seeing it in modern times. And, a Cyberman, a Dalek, a Zygon,
A Centauran.
Slovene,
Sabine
a
is
Santaran, and, a few other myriad enemies doing the whole thing. So now I'm trying to figure out who needs pants.
Pants.
The Sea Devil?
Maybe all I want is pants. A decent pair of pants. Actually, no. It would be the Cyberman. All I want is pants. A decent pair of pants.
pants.
The Sea Devils want pants too. It's so wrong.
Ah, jeez.
God.
Okay. Now I take it you're all picturing that, so. But no, this had to have been a plan, so they could have actually. That would be the only way I could see
That
them
would be
getting.
that's an episode I want to see, or a book I want to read. Like how the Master came up with this.
Yeah.
This uber plot to kill the Doctor and take his body. Because you can tell that probably the Anthony Ainley, now Gordon Tipple body was wearing out.
Probably.
Like would the
He
Black
was-
Guardian show up and be the Sinestro of the group?
If he wasn't still dead.
Yeah.
Well, even the White Guardian's like, he'll be back.
I keep thinking of the 10 Doctors webcomic as canon, which it's not, but it was just I read it at such a point that it affected the way I viewed all classic Who that I watched afterward.
But I
Yeah.
believe even the White Guardian hinted that the Black Guardian will be back one day.
And he might have been back in the novels. I don't know.
It probably was.
It wouldn't be the Valentine Dial Black Guardian though, because unfortunately that actor died.
Mhm.
Right. think the Black Guardian might have appeared in Big Finish, but I'm not certain on that.
Besides, I wouldn't put past the Guardians to constantly change how they look, anyways. I
The
believe
White
we had
Guardian
two
certainly
versions of the
did.
Black Guardian already.
Yeah, because in the first one, both the White and Black Guardians were played by the same person.
Mm-hmm. So they're always changing what form they're taking.
Let's see.
Who would be the Joker?
He wasn't in those old classic Legion of Doom ones.
Yeah,
No,
it would have been
he's-
Joker. It would have been the Toymaker.
Yeah, it
he's
would have been
usually not
Toyman.
in all of the, all the stuff that Luthor organizes. I guess he doesn't like to play well with others.
He doesn't play well with others.
That would
He's the
who
freaking
would that
Joker.
make? Would that make him Davros? Davros doesn't play well with others.
Yeah, that's why the Daleks would be was attending, not Davros. There was an audio called "The Judgment of Iskar," which started a second quest for the Key to Time. Apparently, in the Fifth Doctor era. Excuse me. So that, I think, was the only time the Black Guardian was in audio.
Okay.
Speaking of audio, I just found a cover with Frobisher on it.
But yeah, anyway, how he came up with this whole plan to kill the Doctor, I don't know, but it has to be a plot. It's a trap.
It's very obviously gotta be this
That's right.
really big, masterful plan.
But again, epic plans are kind of the master's thing.
Yes,
Right.
they
Yeah, no,
usually
we
are.
just did Legopolis a couple of weeks ago, and that led into Castrovalvo, which was an elaborate double plan to kill the Doctor.
Which makes me wonder why he was so ham-handed with the poor acting and the sunglasses and everything. Like, I'm used to the Master being a little more subtle than that.
Well, I'm taking it as part of the shock of however method he did to do this.
Maybe.
Okay.
Because, that would be the only way I could say that. But yeah, by the end of it, has obviously come into his fold and is simply, because there he's almost sneering every line, which is almost great.
Mm-hmm.
I always dress for the occasion. He's absolutely enjoying himself. He's gloating over his victory.
And I just thought, I mean, granted, this is kind of becoming more fanon with all the things we've discussed, but I'm kind of wondering with the Master planning to steal the Doctor's body, if he put on the Time Lord regalia so that he could essentially go back to Gallifrey and claim the presidentship.
He might have. That might have been stage 3.
Maybe, yeah. And that would be, again, another clever step, being prepared for that.
And hand
Actually,
it over
that is
to the
something I can see the
Daleks.
Master doing.
And hand it over to the Daleks. Or at least say he was going to hand it over to the Daleks.
Right, there we go.
And then watch the Time Lords completely revolt against him.
Because it wouldn't be the first time the Master had basically made a deal with the Daleks to do something evil, and then when there was time for the Daleks to get their reward, he basically went up yours.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I
Which
think
is-
the Daleks will go along with it as long as they said, get the Master to stop bothering us, and he said, sure. And they agree to leave each other alone. Like, the Daleks, I mean, at least the smart Daleks would be down for that. Some of the more rabid
The Master
versions.
only was ever used the Daleks as pawns once. And that was, I believe, in the Space War. Third Doctor era.
Yeah, Third Doctor era, as I recall, for sure. I can't remember exactly which story it was, but definitely...
It was either Colony in Space or the Space War, and I think it was the Space War, because I think it was the one that led up to Planet of the Daleks.
Yeah. So it must have been Space War then. Because
Yeah.
I believe... Actually, never mind. I'm trying to think of something else, but
It was
no.
also the last episode, I think they had Ogrons in it.
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
always
so
hear
did
the
that
Third
Ogrons.
Doctor thing.
After that, Centaurans were introduced, so...
Yep. No, Ogrons were basically thugs for the Daleks.
Yeah,
Big ape men.
but I remember it being said that once the Centaurans were introduced, Ogrons didn't really have any place in Doctor Who.
They were always the Daleks' chief thugs, so
Yeah, they're
yeah.
Dalek thugs, and the Santarans very obviously are not.
I would
Right.
say it was actually once Davros was introduced.
Yeah, once Davros
Ah,
was introduced, then they really had no need for
Yeah,
the
because at that point
Ogrons.
the Daleks themselves had been reduced to thugs. Do you let your underlings have underlings?
Sure, everyone should have underlings.
yeah.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. I saw Thor: The Dark World. My intern has an intern.
I've been one to turn to my minions. Like, so how many minions? You know, like, do you have a minion to do this for you so you can do something else? We have work to get done.
Wow, that's a really blurry picture.
The
Okay.
miracles of bureaucracy.
Let's see. So yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I found the motorcycle chase to be completely and totally unnecessary.
It was unnecessary, but it's a nice shot. During some of that, the little stretch of that chase where you see
They
the
could have
Doctor
they
and
could have
Grace.
they could have livened it up a bit instead of them having them chase down a dead road, running blues and twos.
True, but meh.
There wasn't
It could
really a
have been
sense of
worse.
there wasn't really a sense of tension. It was like the car chases in Mitchell, Matt.
Like I said, it could have been worse. And actually, didn't we have a really bad chase not too long ago on the show?
We mentioned the chase in you mean in current show or that we were talking about?
Actually,
Because we
there
talked.
was like a couple of really lame foot chases with the Fourth Doctor. Actually, as I recall, I think was one of
Oh,
the
in
remarks we
in
had.
the last episode of Legopolis.
Mm-hmm. I remember some. I believe it was Bill. Yeah, complained a bit
Yeah.
about the foot chases.
Basically, that episode was just padded out to get eventually to the regeneration at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just saying they could have added a few cars in the way, added a little bit more tension, so
Yeah,
that it actually felt like a car chase, increase the speed a little.
but was that supposed to take place in a real city or was it generic nameless city?
It was what took place in a real city. This
Uh,
movie?
this movie, yeah.
Yeah, it took place in San Francisco.
I don't know anything about San Francisco roads to comment. I'm like, if it was L.A. or New York, I'm like, yeah, they definitely could have added more traffic.
San
Oh, you
Francisco's
wait.
pretty much kind of up there, so yeah, they could have.
Yeah, it's a big city, and I mean, it's like San Francisco, Oakland, Alameda. It's a big area. I've never been to Frisco myself.
Mm-hmm.
I know it wasn't shot in San Francisco because there's not enough hill. Um,
Yeah,
that would have been
surprised
that would have been fun. A vehicle chase down the what is it? The most twisted road in the world is in San Francisco.
Hmm.
Surprised it's not in Boston.
Yeah, I think this was shot in Vancouver, by the way.
I love how all the movies that are supposedly set in American cities are shot in Canada.
Well, yeah, that's because
practically half price up there.
no, it's because Vancouver has become the new Hollywood, at least for
Doesn't
TV.
don't they film a lot of movies in Toronto that are supposedly set in American cities as well?
Some Vancouver's more common. Vancouver
I
has
find
the
it funny.
benefit of being not that long a flight from Hollywood.
Hmm.
I find it funny that out of the last couple of movies I know of for sure that were shot in America, every once in a while you still hear of one of them getting at least a couple scenes here in Wisconsin.
Every now and then they do something when they're looking for a particular period piece
Mm-hmm.
and want one of the towns that still have the authentic old fronts.
Or at least most of the authentic stuff, yeah.
Ah.
This, by the way, this was actually, yep, sites around Vancouver were used, including a disused wing of the British Columbia Children's Hospital, the Plaza of Nations, and several street exteriors. No filming was actually carried out in San Francisco. For establishing shots, stock footage was employed.
So, speaking of hospitals, my brain was trolling me while I was watching this because they showed like there's just this one shot where they're just looking down the hospital hallway and it's like completely deserted except for like the doctors or somebody. And I'm like, oh look, it's the interior of the TARDIS.
It's the interior of the TARDIS. No, wait, that would have been older classic Who. Never mind. Especially when they couldn't get the locations that they originally wanted. Plastic white hallways. Anywho.
Oh, so apparently Eric Roberts in this didn't like the wardrobe created for him by Woodman, which was more the Master's style.
Okay.
You know, the black style outfits and stuff.
Right.
He was also uncomfortable with the serpentine contact lenses he was supposed to wear, and with the prosthetics that would have depicted his body's gradual disintegration over the course of the movie.
Oh, they
They're going to
have
have
a few
him
little
turn
prosthetics
into,
here and there for him still.
so they were going to have him turn into a snake?
No, it was that
No.
his body was falling apart.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
the body was... Because remember, originally, he says this body won't last long.
Right.
And apparently his wife or whoever was in the bed kind of took that to be a double entendre, but it wasn't.
Hmm.
What does that remind me of?
But there was also the scene where he goes in the hospital and you see him pulling off his fingernail, which was
Yeah.
all bloody.
Reminds-
'Cause that was also
Ew.
supposed to be the
Yeah.
body wearing out.
Oh yeah, I saw that, and it was
And that was
it was
supposed
such
to...
a strange scene because they never really go farther into it after that. So I just thought it
Yeah.
had to do with like a
Well-
snake shedding motif.
And it's reminiscent of the Terminator, essentially, isn't it?
Sort of.
He
Where
plays this
he
role
turns-
as the Terminator a lot.
Yeah, he does. And that's actually partially wardrobe, too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The dark sunglasses and leather jacket kind of makes him Terminator-esque. And yeah, a lot of that is because Roberts refused to wear the wardrobe created for him, and he didn't like the contact lenses or the prosthetics that would have actually shown his body starting to rot. So by the end of it, if he had played it straight, we would have basically had zombie style Master.
Which would have
Not
been another throwback.
Yeah.
Because we kind of had two versions of the Zombie Master before.
And the scene where he's looking at the current Doctor, that originally would have been expanded to have had all the Doctors.
That would have made sense.
Yeah.
Like that's what I was thinking they should have done while I was watching that.
They couldn't get clearance for the images in time. So the BBC dragged its ass.
Thanks, BBC. Another shot in the foot.
And originally the Dalek voices were filmed as they were supposed to be, but were changed because the concerns they weren't audible enough.
They're hardly audible to begin with now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure taking them back to where they were meant to be would have made them better.
And the original introduction, by the way, was done by the Master in their first cut, and then they had it redone by Paul McGann.
So maybe they would have hinted more heavily if it was the Master introducing things.
Possibly.
To the fact that this is all a big plan.
I've heard that cut once, but I cannot find it again. And there were some other errors that was caught, by the way, of by Outpost Gallifrey. Apparently, they sent a rough cut to the organizer of the Gallifrey 1 conventions and the Outpost Gallifrey website, to get his opinion, and he caught several errors.
Oh.
He also apparently missed several others.
There's so many little things to worry about with this thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you're trying to bring something big back. But yeah, usually the good plan, like they did with the more recent restart with the current running series, was to just keep it a little simple.
Mm-hmm.
That much we can at least credit Rose for, is that they didn't overcomplicate things too much.
Yes, and yeah, here it is a bit bogged down in continuity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's partially the issue for it because some of the continuity isn't right. This would have gone off better, I think, especially since it was aimed for a combination Fox, BBC audience, for it to have been less continuity bogging. I would have dropped the whole Rassilon motif. I would have kept the console room the same other than that. I would not have tried to delve...
But...
Well, it's just a continuity nod that didn't need to be there.
Hmm.
I would have dropped less stuff about about the whole Doctor Half-Human, because that was just stupid of them.
Yeah, that should have been cleaned out.
There was no reason it was really in there.
By the way, since I was mentioning earlier, if you treat this as a 3.5 episode serial, interestingly enough, the second cliffhanger of the serial would have. This might have involved required some creative editing, just since they'd be stretching it out to 4 episodes anyway. But the cliffhanger pretty much falls on the line: the Doctor is half human. No wonder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was bad writing. It stemmed from an earlier draft of the script they used, which had the Doctor learning that he was half human and that his father was somewhere on Earth. But once that whole concept was dropped out of there, it should have been removed entirely from the script. It was just a bad idea. I probably, have I been written this, would have kind of skipped the whole Master Death thing.
Yeah.
And it basically would have been the Doctor and the Master duking it out in San Francisco in 1999.
Actually, I wouldn't even be sure if I wanted to go with the Master, because again, that would require too much continuity. I would go for
not really.
Simpler
You mentioned
monsters.
the fact that he's a Time Lord like the Doctor and my biggest enemy, and that's really all the people need to know.
Yeah, I'm like, he's the Moriarty figure. That's really all you know. As long as you explain they're the same species and they have a history, that's really enough.
Yeah. You don't need to hear about the fact that the Master's, used up all his lives, even though that is in continuity. It would have just been better to reintroduce the Master and basically have the Doctor and the Master duking it out. The Master has some insane plan that he needs to steal the Doctor's TARDIS for.
What did you guys think of the...
I would have dropped the IFRM
Fever deal.
What's that?
What did you guys think of the Millennium Fever being incorporated into this?
It was 1996. Yeah, it was big at the time.
That's what I mean, yeah.
It's still, you look at it, they didn't go over the top with it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't bother me. If they had been making this...
it was an important thing, but they didn't go too crazy with it.
Yeah, it's not like if it had been made 20 years prior, and it would have been the far future of the year 1999, and we would have had flying cars and moon bases and shit. I'm not kidding.
2000.
There is a British sci-fi series called UFO. Was made in the 1960s, taking place in the far future, the year 1980. and they had moon bases and everything.
Yeah,
I know
those were the
because I used to
days.
watch this as a kid. So, had this been made in, 1976 instead of 1996, um, you would have seen a lot more futuristic look to everything than
True.
when it actually comes out.
I'm
And
I'm
that's
just thinking. I'm just thinking nothing dates the '90s as much as mentioning the '99 to 2000 transition. Because as largely because all of us have lived through it and it was pretty much nothing. Yet we all
yeah,
remember how everyone was insane about it.
yeah, but at least this one isn't frothing at the mouth about Y2K.
Yeah,
There wasn't
which a
anything
good
about
number of
that film.
people weren't
Well,
frothing in the mouth, thankfully.
the world was pretty much going to end on New Year's of 2000.
That was part of the things that was going on. And here, though, it's not some kind of weird, superstitious stuff. It's something the master actually does.
Hmm.
Right.
Something that does annoy me is the fact that he just happens to do it on a point that would actually coincide with precisely midnight. Although later on, it is mentioned Paul McGann mentions that that is no context. There is no context, and that they were already too late. So I was kind of like, okay, I can buy that a little better now. It was a way to keep what was going on in a time frame reference, so it doesn't bother me as much as it bothers you, Bill.
I'm not entirely bothered by it.
I
It's
don't
just
think he said he
something.
was really
It's
bothered by
something
it.
I can't overlook, especially considering how '90s this movie is. Like, this movie feels like it was made in between Casper and Men in Black and everything else that came out, and The Matrix and everything else that came out within 5 years of it. Like, you cannot mistake this for anything other than mid to late '90s, and that coupled with the '99 thing, it stands out more
Well,
than
that is because
bother.
this did come out between Casper and Men in
Yeah,
Black and everything else. This is a 1996 telemovie,
right,
and it looks like a 1996 telemovie. It will always look like a
right.
1996 telemovie. Um, if you look at Doctor Who in the 70s and 80s, it looks like 80s British television.
On low budget. But
Well,
sometimes they also
British
manage to pull
television
things
in
some.
general
Hmm?
well, British television in general didn't have the world's biggest budget. I've been watching Blake 7, which was 1978 through 1981.
Yeah, but Doctor Who in particular suffered a lot from it.
And trust me, the special effects and stuff on Blake 7 were no better than what was going on Doctor Who at the time. Heck,
People
they're
being held
opening.
in place by pipe cleaner or by those tubes off of a vacuum cleaner.
I watched as somebody's standing behind the one of the consoles for the Liberator, the big ship on Blake 7, and I'm watching that console wobble like hell. They couldn't even afford to do model work half the time on Blake 7. Scenes used for the Liberator were animated. And it wasn't really good animation. It was like, it felt a step up from the stuff that Terry Gilliam used to do for Monty Python. So, really?
Cutout images floating through space.
Yeah, essentially that's kind of what it felt like. And it got done with it because Blake 7 was very well written. In fact, there was a lot of Doctor Who crossover in Blake 7 by actors, not by actual figures. Although Terry Nation did want to have the end of season 2 be the Dalek invasion of the galaxy, but the producers shot him down. What's that?
Wouldn't surprise me.
Well, this is Terry Nation. This is the guy that made the Daleks, and he's the creator of Blake 7.
So yeah, he wants to tie in everything, and he wants his big babies to take over the universe as
Well,
usual.
Terry Nation did want to have a Dalek, a Dalek standalone show anyway.
Mm-hmm. And that would be one step of trying to get closer to it.
But the budget is pretty much the same level. But Colin Baker was in Blake 7. Valentine Dial was in Blake 7. Deep Roy, who played the homunculus in Talent of Wang Chiang, it basically had a role in Blake 7 like every season, different role. But yeah. Dudley Simpson, who did the music for Doctor Who prior to John Nathan Turner, did the music for Blake 7. So there's a lot of crossover in production staff and the guest cast between the two shows. I would recommend Blake 7 to any person that liked 70s to early 80s Doctor Who. But
Which
back on the
apparently is a lot of people considering that that's the Tom Baker era.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. By the way, most of Blake 7's on YouTube. Just look it up.
Oh, that's how you've been watching it.
Yep.
Wouldn't be surprised
Yeah,
if it's on
YouTube.
Daily Motion as well.
Yeah, I'm all the way into season 3.
Jeez, 'em.
Yeah, it's been a week where I haven't had much to do. We've been snowed in for a couple of days here, so.
Randy's been tapping the crook of his arm, trying to get a vein up so he can insert more Blake 7.
Well, there's apparently a remake of that in the works.
Yeah,
It was-
the BBC's been arguing over trying to get a reboot or a remake of Blake 7 for the longest time.
No, it's been greenlighted. There's a studio that's actually working on it.
Oh.
It could last longer than the Quatermass reboot.
It was going to come out on Syfy, but
That'll be the death of it right off the bat.
Georgetown Studio, the company that's doing it, kind of parted ways from NBC Universal, so that they're thinking of it coming out as an internet show. But it's only if they do that, it's only going to be available on like Xbox.
What?
Things that might prompt me to get an Xbox.
No, they won't. Because that'll be the death of it.
Well, Xbox is
You
trying to
can't make
branch
me go to
into
Xbox. You can't. PC does it better.
Now,
Anywho.
Xbox is trying to get into the whole series market because they're also coming out with like a Halo series. But yeah. Anyway,
Halo's kind of run its course too. But anyway,
we'll see if anything comes out of that. Anyway, so yeah, this feels like a mid 1990 telemovie.
it feels like it, looks like it, and I admire it for it.
Like,
Yeah.
and maybe just the fact that I've seen so many more 90s movies than I have of 70s British television, just is what causes the other to stand out to me. I don't know. Whereas I see classic Doctor Who, and I'm like, that's classic Doctor Who, and nothing else that I've seen is really that way. Whereas I look at this movie, and I'm like, I can think of a dozen things off the top of my head that use either the same effects or the same styles of certain things, or
See, I look at
Other
this and
things.
I see the middle ground between classic and modern Who.
Really kind
oh
of
yeah,
is.
definitely that as well. Yeah,
This definitely set a few standards. Like I said, the TARDIS console for one.
Getting
This
slapped in
is-
the face.
Hmm?
The Doctor getting slapped in the face.
This-
He got slapped in almost every single season for the next 3 seasons.
Mm-hmm. And the Doctor kissing his companion.
Snogging, yes.
Yeah. Started in
no,
this.
this movie was made on this side of the Atlantic, so it was kissing.
The Brits still refer to it as snogging, so it's snogging.
But it wasn't made in.
But yeah, this is what
But
kind of set that.
but it's actually, Bill, it's 2 British people snogging, so it counts.
No, Grace was American.
I could have sworn her actress was British. I know that her and McGann went to the same school.
Let's see, Daphne Ashbrook on Wikipedia.
I believe her and McGann were actually kind of in the same class, which is why they kind of knew each other and played off each other kind of well in this. I could be wrong, but I do know that they knew each other previous to
Born
this.
30 January 1963 in Long Beach, California.
I know they did something together. I was almost sure it was at least schooling, but I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I know,
Wait,
but I
are
do
you saying
know
that?
in the
Are you
DVD
saying that
extras that they were talking about how
Yep.
they knew each other.
So the co-star of this movie was born the same year that Doctor Who started.
Yep.
Which means she's 50.
51 as of 3 weeks ago. Ish.
Yeah. She was raised in the San Diego area.
Weird. Maybe she went to study abroad then, maybe.
She has done other stuff in science fiction besides Grace Holloway. She was in Star Trek Deep Space Nine as the character Melora in the episode Melora. Um, and yes, they actually mentioned that her kissing the Doctor romantically set a precedent for the movies for the more sexually charged nature of the new Doctor Who series. So apparently she kissed the Doctor and the British people went, yes! And Russell T Davies went, ooh.
Russell T Davies sat there and went, "Oh my!"
And now I'm getting the mental image of Russell T Davies and George Takei in the same room.
Oh yes, that's actually exactly what popped into my mind. Actually, I was kind of picturing them in a private theater watching this.
I was seeing them watching the movie while in a hot tub.
Oh.
Oh my. Let's see. She's done a little work for Big Finish now.
Sweet. Yeah, I was thinking she did
But
some
not
work for Big
Doctor
Finish.
Who work, I don't think.
No, Doctor Who work. I'm pretty sure she did.
The audio play The Next Life, who she
Yes,
did
I'm opening
opposite
up
Paul
the
McGann.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
I thought she came back for at least a little bit.
Oh
of
yeah,
it.
there was Doctor Who. Okay. Was she playing Grace?
And
is the question.
she was noted that she is one of only 10 actors and the only female to be credited in both the Star Trek and Doctor Who franchises until Nana Visitor had a supporting role in Torchwood Miracle Day.
I'm fairly certain that the character. I haven't heard the audio play, but the character's name is not listed as Grace, and I have a feeling they're unrelated. So, the fact that it is her is pretty much anecdotal.
Maybe
It
she
is
changed her name.
It is a Charlie and Chris serial, and apparently Rassilon is in it. I kind of want to hear this now.
All right, but no, I can't see what she and McGann would have done prior to this, but
Like I said, I think it was schooling or something like that. I do know that they knew each other from something else, but I haven't watched the extras for the movie in so long. And I also know that McGann and McCoy were also kind of buddy-buddy for a while before this, too, as I recall.
well, if they
Before
weren't
this movie?
before, they certainly are now because apparently all the ex-doctors save Eccleston actually tend to hang out a little bit with each other.
Mm-hmm.
David Tennant has no choice than to hang out with Peter Davidson. Anytime his wife wants to go to the family to her family for dinner, there's Peter Davidson, and he has to say hi, Dad.
They also keep having babies, so they have to have Peter around. But the
yes, as
They're
mentioned
having
on
the
before,
extended family over for dinner.
as we know, at somewhere there's the secret doctor eugenics project going on.
We will mesh
somebody's there
the
just-
bloodlines and come up with the true doctor equation.
Yes.
And
I'm
you know
waiting
what?
for.
Con-
I'm waiting
considering
for.
we've
One
Go
time.
ahead.
considering we've talked about half humans, and we've talked about the Master, and we've talked about Lex Luthor, I'm now pretty much just picturing what was that? Where Superman was cloned? What was that? I'm good with names until I need to say them out loud.
Well, it depends on which time.
Yeah, which version
I
of
mean,
Superboy are you talking about?
The
Yeah,
one,
'cause-
the one that appeared in Young Justice and other things
Mhm.
around.
Yeah,
Starts with an
Connor
S.
Kent. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that? It's he's Superboy normally, but
No,
yeah,
no,
No, he's talking about the group that
the
made him.
corporation. Yeah.
oh, what group was that? Wasn't Star Labs? It was Cadmus.
Oh yeah,
Cadmus
that's
Yeah,
Labs.
right.
that's right.
It ends with an S. Doesn't start with an S. Okay.
Yes.
Cadmus. Yeah.
Yeah, it just took me a moment to think about it. I actually had to go into Smallville.
I've not watched Smallville.
It's a good watch. Anyway, um, um,
Mixing bloodlines.
no, I'm actually trying to get back on the actual topic.
Well, is there anything else we wanted to say about the movie?
There's some redeeming features to this movie.
Well, yeah, we've been covering some of them.
Oh yeah, the ending, by the way, is totally bogus.
Yeah, some of the ending is kind of, huh.
Master getting
Yeah.
sucked into the Eye of Harmony, not my issue. The fact that
Where
the
the
TARDIS
TARDIS resurrects the companions.
Yeah.
Yes. Which, by the way,
Yeah.
is the first appearance of the sparkly energy.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
Now a staple in the series
That was
of every
pretty
time
much-
the Doctor regenerates.
Mhm.
That was pretty much the proto Bad Wolf effect.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like you can almost retcon that to say that Rose didn't want the Doctor's previous companions to die, and resurrected those two for some reason.
And now you realize I want to make that scene, don't you?
Now you realize I want them to bring Adric back, right? Rose, can you bring back Adric, please? Give him another shot.
Okay, give me a couple seconds to
There's one
All of a sudden,
problem
Adric
with
gets pulled
bringing
through the
Adric
portal
back.
of time and just looks at the Doctor like, "What
You're gonna
just
bring
happened?"
Adric back, like, to watch the Ice Age start.
The problem is, the problem with Badrick is the fact that it's like, yeah, okay, so you need to bring back Badrick. Where's his body? Well, some of it's here, some of it's in that bush over there, some of it's like 3 miles over that way.
Well,
All she needs is a little drop of sweat. Or blood.
Okay, they land where the ship landed. So where do we find Adric? Over there. Over there. Look into the atmosphere. And up there.
They can clone him.
And look at it this way, that means that he was part of the planet, that means that there would have been a little bit of Adric in all of us.
Yeah. And now someone out there is desperately trying to dig it out.
Must gouge it out with a knife.
Get it out of me! I gotta get it
That
out
kind
of
of-
me!
It was my left foot, I knew all along! Curse you!
Does that make Adric Adam?
Oh god. Yes. Yes, it does.
And
Does it
that
make Lilith?
which kind of makes the guy from City of Death into God. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm going into Ava now. We better finish this up before I hit instrumentality.
Oh.
Because now I'm trying to figure out who the Doctor Who equivalent of Sele would be. This is not good. It may spawn a fanfic, but this is not good.
Just an extra chapter in your multiple universes, Randy.
Yeah.
So, Master, what is going on? Everything is proceeding according to the scenario.
I'm waiting for the Pacific Rim Godzilla fanfic coming out.
Oh, there has to be one. There's probably
already
people.
is one.
There should be
Yeah.
one. If there isn't, I'll fix that. I'm sure I could write that. I'm pretty damn sure I could. Says the man
You really
who
wanna
has
know if
half
there's
of
one?
the Godzilla franchise on a box near
I
about
know you
5
can
feet away from
easily
him.
look it up. I can look it up.
But
I'm
anyway.
already halfway there. 11 current fan fiction crossovers between Pacific Rim and Godzilla.
Ugh.
Okay.
We'll have to start going through them and seeing which ones are quality and which ones are rubbish.
Don't worry, Matt. Just add yours to the pile.
But no,
But I'll add
it's-
Ultraman. That'll make me different.
I could see a fusion of the Master and Gendo Akari. It's not funny.
Okay. We're mixing our fandoms.
I do this all the time. This is what I
Yes,
do
you
for
I
a
do.
living.
too, but
The Master is taken over. All of a sudden, the TARDIS appears and out pops Ravna.
Hey, I write fiction on that. Don't go there, Matt.
Yeah,
I'm just giving
that's
you little
copyright
ideas.
infringement.
Yeah, that's copyright infringement. I'll sue. Or I'll just, get my car fixed, drive up there, and kick your ass. One or the
So-
other.
Just because we're going off on these random tangents, I just thought about Moose as a Cyberman who can't shoot because he can't see you.
You would think being cybernetically enhanced would fix that issue. I'm just saying.
You would think that.
You would think that, but
Would
we're
Ryoga
talking
as
the
a
Ravna
Cyberman
universe.
get lost?
His GPS malfunctions.
And how would cyber conversion affect the Jisenkyo curses? These are questions I must ponder as I'm trying to sleep tonight.
Cyber,
God damn
Cyber
it, Bill.
Pig. Cyber Pig.
Cyber Panda.
Oh God. Cyber Panda would kill everybody.
that already exists. Isn't there a Robot Panda anime? I think I have it actually.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I had a
actually
figure
have
for it. I think I had a figure for
Oh, that's
it.
right. Actually, you know what? Yeah, I do have a DVD and a figure for it.
So it already
Anyway,
exists.
We're,
Know that.
Never mind.
we're losing our audience, guys. We're losing the
Losing
3
us.
people that actually listen to us.
3 people. You haven't looked at our numbers lately.
Me.
By
I
this
have-
point, there's only 3.
Hey, we
One of-
have a female in the cast. That guarantees at least 10 people will keep listening to the end.
So you're saying that we should have my girlfriend on more often?
Ratings.
Sure. No problem with
Yes.
that.
Yay! Even if I work until
we are in
late,
fact
so-
recruiting for a 3rd cast member because, well, we kind of keep or a 4th cast member because we keep losing our 4th cast member.
Yeah.
They keep having weird, awkward hours that never mesh with anybody else.
Yeah. Anyway,
Mhm.
Yeah.
anywho,
Oh,
back
Doctor Who.
right.
Yes. By the way, Doctor Who.
We are following the map.
One
Okay,
thing
so
we
yes,
haven't
that-
mentioned, one thing we haven't talked about, and this is probably because we talked about it in our 2 lost versions of this discussion, is the acting, particularly or just the Doctor in general in this movie.
I find his acting to be fine.
It's interesting. I've seen people pretty much say that he was pretty much just coasting through it, but I can't see that when I watch this. I see him
No.
doing a fairly passable job.
Yeah.
Like
Actually,
he's doing
yeah.
if not even a good job. I mean,
Yeah.
he's doing a
Yeah.
post-regenerative Doctor, so he's kind of weird, but that's
Yeah,
not a flaw.
Always takes unless you're
Yeah.
Tom Baker, it always takes an episode or 2 to find your stride in
Right.
Doctor Who.
That's
And
not a bug.
He does
it's a
find
feature.
his stride about midway through this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like
that
And
whole,
even
like-
then, even before that, there's scenes where it's just he's great. Like
Yeah.
he's talking to her and he's talking to, and he immediately interrupts because of the fact that his shoes feel great.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was just thinking of that scene. Like, I haven't seen this
Yes.
movie in forever. Like, I never rewatched it, but that's the one scene that really, or one of them that really sticks into my head. The other
I'm
one
gonna
is
have to go
him
out-
pulling the thing out of his chest.
Yeah,
The
that's the perfect
camera. Yeah.
post-regenerative Doctor thing. I mean,
I'm going to have to buy this movie, and we're going to have to sit down and watch it, Aaron.
Or you can borrow
I've
from me
seen
when I
it.
come over.
I own the VHS.
I-
It's been a very long time since I've seen it.
I want the DVD because I want the commentary.
Oh yeah, you want the
yes,
commentary. You also
I
want some
want
of
the
the special
commentary, too.
behind-the-scenes stuff. There's a lot of in-depth behind-the-scenes stuff.
So yeah, I'm thinking that that's a night with popcorn. Yeah.
Yay, popcorn. And Lego Movie.
Not the same night as Lego Movie. I'm talking a sit-down night at your house.
Batman.
Or maybe, once we get our own place and we have a couch, so we can sit on the couch with popcorn and watch a movie.
Yeah, that would be
Saying.
awesome.
Couchy couch.
Yeah, it would be.
I would love to have my own place. I'm kind of getting chafed living in this apartment building the longer I live here.
Yeah, it does
The more they're
It does
pissing-
seem to get smaller and smaller, doesn't it?
It does, and the people in charge of it have become more irritating.
I swear they're Nazi war criminals in hiding.
Oh, you know why she's so strict like that? Because she wants to own like a set of her own apartments.
And pissing off renters is the way to do that? Just saying?
Yeah, apparently.
Apparently, and apparently
She's
that's
like
also
trying
the
to
best way to
impress her
keep from never getting
bosses.
another apartment.
I look at the notices and warnings around there, and I keep seeing concentration camp movies, I swear.
I don't remember seeing this many, warning signs posted around Karen Arms' apartments when I lived there.
Yeah, back to the movie.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You'd say.
Distracted. Yeah, no, Paul McGann's acting, there is nothing wrong with Paul McGann's acting in this movie. He does a great job, and, he will go on to be a great doctor in audio.
Yeah.
And
I mean, if anything, it would be nice if some of the things that were introduced to the character later, like the snark and such, were more prevalent here. But to be fair, those were things written later.
Because he's not in any serious danger
Right.
until he's put in the Clockwork Orange thing and chained up.
Yeah.
And then he
But
does
then
start
he's
snarking
more-
at the
he's
master.
more- I saw him pleading, doing pleading for his life and such, and saying at one point he was like, "Oh, give me a break" or whatever. That was the most I really noticed. Here,
No,
Oh.
I remember him snarking
change
full
was a
on.
bit of snark,
He
too.
was pleading with Lee to understand what's going on
Yeah.
here. But
No, I
he
wasn't
wasn't
saying like-
pleading
I
with the
wasn't saying
master
like
at
this-
all. He was
no,
giving
but
the
he was
master
like-
a whole lip.
He was pleading and to try and essentially wake the humans up to the truth, type of deal. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, it's no, there is a point that would not have been in later versions of that, and that's this can't be how it ends. Someone stop this, please. Stop. Yeah, that bit is
Right.
a little bit out of character for later incarnations. It's like, when we see him come back for the webisode that they did prior to Day of the Doctor.
For a Night of the
Nice.
Doctor, you mean?
Yeah, I couldn't remember if that one was Night of the Doctor or the other one, but yeah, that one where it's he tells him he's only got 5 minutes to live, and he's like, well, what if I get bored? Give me
get
show me
bored?
some TV. Give me a book to read. Knitting. Hand
Yeah,
me
right,
knitting.
How about a game of chess?
He's just, that kind of sarcastic snark was something that was developed, I think, early on in the Eighth
Right.
Doctor's audio run.
And if that had been something they had come up with in the process of making this movie, it might have been stronger because it would have made the Eighth Doctor have a stronger identity in this movie, which is important because he's only really in half the movie anyway.
Again, well, 3/4 of the movie. Two-thirds.
I'm not sure if I count stumbling around not knowing who he is as being the Eighth Doctor.
Well, generally, all the doctors go through that a bit. I mean, take a look. It took a
When they're
full
poisoned
season
by the
for
Ronnie.
Sylvester. It took a full season for Sylvester McCoy to hit his stride.
True.
Before that, he was playing the bumbler, and it took the season after before he became the chess master.
Right.
And the as good as Castrovalva is, you really don't see the personality of the Fifth Doctor until nearly the end of the serial. Robot Tom Baker pretty much landed it right off the bat.
Because that's Tom Baker.
Colin Baker, I don't think ever fully settled down into his persona.
Not until the audio adventures, yeah.
Maybe
Pertwee,
maybe like his last episode.
Spearhead from Space, you don't really get to see a lot of Pertwee. Is what basically became his signature
Right.
doctor bit.
They do see a little bit at the end of the last episode.
And it took a full season before they decided to turn the Doctor into the direction that became the Doctor with Hartnell.
How long
can't
did it
really
take
tell you about Troughton because
because they're lost episodes.
they're lost episodes. I've never seen them. I've seen a little bit of Power of the Daleks, but I can't really stand to watch it in audio clips. I'm going to have to when we review it, but it annoys the hell out of me.
What I mean is David Tennant's first essentially TV movie. He's out of commission for half of it, but by that last 15 minutes, you know who this 10th Doctor is.
And that is something that they've tried really hard to do in the new series, because it's the same thing with Matt Smith in the 11th Hour.
Right.
They tried to have them established.
He wanders around out of it further, and this is probably what we're going to see with Capaldi. Is his first episode, he's going to be out of it for that, but probably by the last 10 to 20 minutes, no, I'd say 10 to 15 minutes, he will come out in what will become his signature personality.
And that's what I'm just saying. If they had really developed the Eighth Doctor enough to do that in this movie, I think it would have been, the character would have come off as stronger and more enjoyed by audiences who did not go on to listen to audios and such.
Yeah, it's possible. It's a strong thing is that they were, trying to bring him back. It was a mistake for them to try to do this pilot and do a regeneration.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was just about to say, it's just that there's too much going on, and if anything, that even Sylvester McCoy admitted should be taken out as the regeneration and come back to it later.
Yeah, I think that would have been a better idea. It worked better with Rose because they had more time to establish they basically spent the entire episode establishing who the Doctor was.
Yeah, they pretty much took 8 years to get to around to that regeneration.
But they finally did it. At least.
but it's they still when they came out of the gate though, he had a chance to establish himself and spent the full hour doing so.
What did you guys think of Grace?
She was okay. She reminded me a little too much of Perry at times.
I think she was kind of forgettable.
She was Perry with a brain.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why being a cardiosurgeon qualifies you for being able to jumpstart a time spacecraft from thousands and thousands of years in your future and from another planet.
Because it's the 90s.
Set alarm clocks. That's what the doctor said.
Yeah, because
how are you at setting alarm clocks?
Because it's the 90s, and
yet they show her under the console rewiring. Because apparently that means she also knows how to jump a car. Go ahead, Aaron.
90s girl power. 90s girl power. Don't you guys remember 90s girl power? 90s girl power could do anything. We had Spice Girls.
Yeah, I was just about to say, Spice Girls.
I was never that big on 90s girl power, just to say.
Well, it was the whole... It was kind of reiterating that women could do...
I like 80s girl power better, because that gave us Ace.
Yeah, that's true. I will admit that. Ace rock.
I kind of feel like Grace was sort of a prototype that didn't quite work out, but they took elements of her and used them to make Rose and Martha respectively.
Kind of.
There are kind of parts of Nyssa in there too, her sciencey stuff.
A little bit. She was a brainier, like I said, she was a brainier Perry, because she had a bit of Perry's enthusiasm at times, especially when she got into TARDIS.
I think she was missing the main thing that JNT considered important about having Perry on screen.
I believe if this had been a series, either Grace or Lee or both of them would have left with the Doctor.
I thought they were going to say would have been shirtless to go along with what I had just said.
What's that?
Never mind.
Go ahead.
You know,
Just re-say it, Bill, because
no.
you've already drawn attention to yourself.
Yes. Now,
You
Bill,
please say
say
it in front of the rest of the class.
I was saying that she seemed to have been missing what J&T seemed to consider Perry's main asset, which was the fact that she was largely exposed. And then you started the next sentence with, I believe if this became a series, either Grace or Lee would have been. My brain jumped to be shirtless. And then you obviously did not say that.
No, I didn't. Oh, I'm just saying that, they left at this one and they would have probably stayed, one or both of them would have stayed on as companions had this been a series.
But they would have met up again. They would have met up again in the first real episode, basically.
Yeah, I think probably just because of the male doctor, female companion kind of standard, it probably would have been Grace, though I would have preferred Lee because he really had no place else to go.
You don't think they would have brought Lee in as a Tegan, Harry character?
More of an Adric, really.
More of an Adric, yeah. Wait. Only not as brainy.
Not Tegan. Turlo is the word I meant. I said Tegan, I meant Turlo, but as a Turlo or Harry or Adric. No, he's not really an Adric. He's not smart.
Again, yeah, not Turlo because he's not that smart either.
But he really, they kind of basically made it so he had no place left to go.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm really surprised.
Yeah, exactly.
The doctor didn't take him on as a companion.
That was pretty much because it was a movie. So the next episode probably would have been something like Partners in Crime, except probably not quite, but something like that where they met again and decided to go off together.
Yeah.
Well,
but no, I had no problems with Paul McGann. I had no problems with Daphne. I had no problems with Yang Shi So, except for the fact that they made his character
a little
kind of stereotyped.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It made him a little too one note, and I'm sure that if given the time to flesh him out, they would have done better with the exact same character and actor.
That kind of reminds me of something I was going to look up before starting this.
They needed Lee from Walking Dead.
And on that note, we are...
Lee? No, they don't need Lee. Basically, I'd like to see the Doctor traveling around with Daryl.
As I was saying, we are at the 2-hour point now.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're about 15 minutes before we normally end. I'm just trying to pull up one fact that I had meant to look up before the podcast, and now my computer is being very slow.
So should we... Well, while we wait, should we start doing numbers then?
Generally, we have all of our facts in place before we give our review numbers.
For the record, in terms of quality television, and of especially considering what Doctor Who would become, it's worth noting that this is several months to a year before the first season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer aired.
Mm-hmm. Which Buffy was one of those shows that did kind of change the way we looked at television.
Right.
Star
I
Trek
never watched it, so...
Buffy?
Yeah,
no,
I never
but
watched Buffy.
It was Whedon, and it was basically showed how Whedon ran a show, and several shows that came out after that were in kind of that Whedon-esque kind of feel, including Doctor Who.
RTD has stated that Buffy was a big influence.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that have brought up programming that was influenced by Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That's why I said it changed television. Star Trek The Next Generation changed television because it proved that you could do high amounts of CGI graphics on a TV show budget.
Just need to know how to do it.
There every 5 to 10 years there's a show that comes out that basically has everybody take a look at it, and they realize that way of doing it is better, and that's just one of those shows that happen to have an influence on the next 10 years of television.
Then explain reality television to me.
Yeah.
Survivor. Everybody saw that CBS was airing Survivor, was making a fortune off of it with low overhead, and that's the birth of reality television as we know it today.
Look at South Park.
And
Maybe
how many shows
South Park or The Simpsons. Probably more of The
Yeah.
Simpsons. As much as people don't want to give it credit anymore, because it's been
it's
on
not
for
being
so long, and
enforced.
yeah, it's become popular to hate on The Simpsons just because it's been on TV for a
Yeah.
long time, and
It's for me. It's not the fact that it's been on TV a long time. For me, it's the fact that they've really kind of drained the well and they're not willing to stretch out. To be honest, these
I don't know.
characters have been locked in these ages for well over 20 years now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They need to move.
Yeah, I've mentioned that the fact that if they had gone forward on a linear time basis, Bart would have already dropped out of college if he ever went and would probably be in jail by now.
Ash Ketchum has been 10 years old for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I've seen
think
I've
they're
seen
right
clips with
state.
an adult Ash Ketchum,
I
still
think
dressed like he did as a kid.
thinking of going back to Simpsons just quick, I think that their writing actually did get better after the movie came out. They could actually afford to hire decent writers, but before that, the show has definitely had declined in quality around season 10 or so.
Mm.
Did you find what you were looking for, Bill?
Oh yeah, what I was looking for was what year Buffy season 1 aired.
Ah,
Okay.
okay. So that's
So
covered then.
reviews.
Yep.
So now we're going to do numbers.
Yep.
Would the guests like to go first?
I don't know how you guys do this, so
We
Generally,
rate from
do
1 to 5.
overall thoughts and our rating out of 5.
Yep.
rating out of 5.
Rating out of 5 and overall
Yeah.
thoughts on the
Half
story.
marks are allowed, so if you want to do something and a half,
We have done quarter marks, but very rarely.
we try to stay away from it.
I guess I don't know. Why don't you guys go first? Actually,
Okay.
I just think of a little
The
bit.
guest feels insecure, which is what I kind of figured.
Yeah.
I'm usually the first one to go, so I guess I'll go. Um, the writing was a cluster, but that's only because they really tried to shoehorn way too much. They should have known better. On the other hand, we have some very good acting out of the master for the last act. We have overall a really good round with Paul McGann as a doctor. Really disappointed that we couldn't get more on-screen stuff with him, but the two things we do have of him just prove that he was a really good doctor, and in fact he still does audio adventures, continues to further that fact. We have some decent stuff that's part of continuity. We have some very good sets and props especially. There's also a few other little continuity flubs that kind of bring it down with the writing as well. But that's also, I think, in part that they tried to hurry this thing up so they could actually at least get it out there before Universal or someone else pulled the plug. So, despite the fact that it's a little racehorsed and could have used a few more months to digest and get things properly in place, I guess I would give it about 4. Being really, really, very nice to it and understanding all its problems, about 4.
Wow, that's really generous.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I
that
agree.
was a lot higher than I was gonna do.
Yeah.
Again, being very nice and seeing where all the good things are and understanding why there are flaws, I can be very nice to this one. Otherwise, if I was to say have done this like around the first or second season of Doctor Who and then looked at this, I'd probably give it about a 3.
Okay. Well, I see this as a mid-1990s Fox movie of the week. And it is a mid-1990s Fox movie of the week. This is the same generation of movies that brought us movies like Generation X, which was a take of the Marvel comic by the same name. It feels like it as far as directing, as far as special effects, and general feel of the movie. It has that mid-90s feel. As Doctor Who, it both succeeds and falls short at the same time. Because there's, like I mentioned at the very beginning, there's so much of it that's written right and so much of it that's written wrong. Enough to make a continuity. If you're a continuity nut, your hair is going to be tearing out by the end of this episode. There's parts of this movie that the producers to this day refuse to acknowledge, like Half Human. I find the writing to be a little lackluster for what all they tried to put into it, and the ending to be a little asinine with the master killing them and them coming back to life in a magical glowing light show that's never really explained. Except for the doctor apparently prayed to the TARDIS and the TARDIS decided to bring them back. No, the dead stay dead. I'm sorry.
Could have turned them into eggs.
Yeah, or eggs. In any place, I think by the end of it, I have to give it 2.5 stars. It would have been 3 if it wasn't for the hokey ending and the unnecessarily lackluster chase scene. And if they'd actually did some filming in San Francisco, I probably would have liked it better too.
Interesting thing about this movie is that if it were part of a hypothetical series that had been running all the way through 1990 to 1996, which would have made this probably the premiere to season 33, something like that. Oh no, wait. Yeah, 33 pretty much exactly, depending on either whether it's beginning, end, or middle of season. If it were in that type of scenario, it would be a lackluster regeneration, nothing terrible but nothing great. Definitely probably the weakest regeneration story we've covered so far, just because we've covered 5 excellent regeneration stories in a row. Or, good to excellent at least. Some of them weren't quite top of the line, but they were still good. So this is a little weaker than those. As an attempt to bring back the series in a pilot, it pretty much set the template for what not to do, which is essentially trying to do way too many things at once without really knowing what audience they were trying to reach out to, whether it was the classic fans or the new audience, and really just confused both. The first time I watched this, I focused on the good, the second time the bad, and the third time, naturally, I ended up mostly seeing the ugly. But I'm going to come down straight in the middle, give it a 3 out of 5.
Actually, yeah, I'm kind of been rethinking it while I've been thinking about what I even said. I'm like, you know what, I actually was 50-50, so you know what, 3. It should be a 3. I don't know why I was trying to be so nice to it. Yeah, it's a 3.
Okay, I guess it's my turn now.
Yeah.
And Randy needs to get out of my head because I was going to give it like a 2.5 stars. Mostly, just because I remember, gosh, I can't remember if I saw it actually not advertised, but they did an article on it either in Sci-Fi Channel magazine, because I remember reading Sci-Fi Channel magazine way back in the 90s to get any information on anime at the time, because I didn't have access to Animerica or any other magazines. It was the only thing that had anime articles in it. I can't remember if it was either that, TV Guide, or Entertainment Weekly that kind of hyped it up a little bit. And I got really excited because I was like, oh man, Doctor Who's going to be on TV and everything's going to be awesome. It's going to be, it's going to be just like how it was on PBS and everything. And it wasn't, the productions were a lot better, but it was missing something. And it was, I don't know, I don't think having it be partially an American production really dragged it down. It's just the type.
Well,
The type of production with it, yeah.
I think it was partially that as an American production kind of dumbed it down a bit, but also they didn't have the money that they should have had to throw at it.
I don't think it was
Simply being an
that.
American production wasn't the problem, because if this was something, for example, like Buffy, I don't think people complained, but it's just they went for a very generic sci-fi look that was very reminiscent of all of these well-known effects and other things that were happening around the time, and it just became a very a very generic thing that looked like everything else coming out at the time as a
Yeah, and
result.
for me, that big disappointment is what really kind of hits me because it could have led to something bigger. We could have had, how many extra years of a new Doctor Who series, and who knows what they would have been
Actually,
able to do.
no, we couldn't have, but that wasn't its fault. It was the fact that it was up against the frickin' Dan Heart Attack episode of Roseanne.
Now, here's
Well,
something
no, if it
I've been
wasn't
thinking about for the
against
past.
that, if it had just been on its own, it could have. It
It was
had.
still
I'm,
the
I'm,
it was still the most videotaped item that particular night, but of course that didn't factor into Fox's judgment.
I'm going to respond to that about how it would have lasted as a series, but after you finish your whole thing and you're ready with your rating and whatever.
Yeah, my rating is 2.5 stars, mostly just because, from what I remember, just it was a very disappointing. I think what Bill said also kind of generic. It did not stand out as much as I was hoping it would.
Well,
Like
So
now,
it,
two
it didn't open people's eyes and say, "Hey, there's Doctor Who. Run out to your local library and rent like all the VHS tapes and see what the show is about, and then come back and watch the TV series that'll be premiering next week."
well, now I would also have to say that Randy, you've been saying you want to get the DVD, and believe me, there are a ton of extras talking about the making of this thing. BBC had started making demands on one side, Fox started making demands on the other. Script and yeah, the scripts constantly got re-edited and reshuffled and everything else.
and that shows that the script got rewritten so much.
Yeah, and a lot of the good intention probably got shot in the foot because of that. And yeah, I do not blame the people who tried to make this thing. I blame the people who forced the people making this thing to do things and shoehorn it in, even though even they probably didn't want it.
Well, the BBC was basically probably trying to make sure that it was trying to keep true to the Doctor Who continuity.
I
Not necessarily
believe
including
one of the
Doctor
particular
Nudity, just
things even
not
from
violating
BBC's
it.
end was that the Doctor had to be played by somebody British. Was already one
Yeah.
of the first demands they started making.
That's because remember the BBC was trying to sell this in England too. This would have been the first actual co-production if this had gone into a series. Like BBC Wales does with BBC America now for the new series of Who, or has since 2010.
Yeah.
And I think they did a co-production. Or no, Sci-Fi just paid for some of it. But no,
Or otherwise,
This-
Torchwood, the latest season of Torchwood.
let's not talk about Miracle Day. Let's not talk about Miracle Day. It is a silly place. But no, it would have been the first true, BBC American co-production on a series like that. But no, it was not to be for many reasons. One of which was because the fact that Fox put in a lot of ridiculous demands by people that didn't understand the series. A lot of it was the fact that they added way too much of what I guess would be called continuity porn.
Yeah,
And
like
also,
that was part of, like
also,
I said, not knowing which audience to reach out to and trying to do way too much at once.
yeah,
And
trying
then,
to
of course-
trying to support two different audiences at once, but also I believe Universal was starting to smell that something wasn't going quite right, so they needed to really rush production and get it out there. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened at all. Is also another thing I believe I kind of heard in some of the extras, so they really needed to get this going or it wouldn't have happened. Because I think Universal was backing this with the original intent that Steven Spielberg was backing it.
No,
Which
it was
Spielberg
always.
had backed out almost a year before this actually happened. It was still kind of, I believe, a couple of the guys still behind this were part of his production staff.
Okay.
But yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
it's literally almost a movie long mess
Yeah,
that
but
the DVD covers.
Bill, did you want to say anything else?
Well, basically, what I was just gonna say, you're mentioning about how many years it could have lasted as a series, and I'm just thinking if it had gone on, it would have pretty much. I mean, its first competition would have been up against Star Trek Voyager and Deep Space Nine, considering that Star Trek had pretty much been running strong since Doctor Who's last actual season, and therefore had a strong current following. Um, and then at the same time, Buffy would have come out, somewhere in the area
Less
of the
than what it
first
was,
or second season of this.
almost a year to the day from this
Yeah,
that
so
Buffy came out.
depending on when the season started, it would have been either during the first or during the second or between seasons. And I'm just kind of wondering, compared to the strength, compared to those shows, if we had seen a show that was just like this movie, or just enough to be successful and continued,
Mm-hmm.
how long that actually would have lasted up against those.
Yeah. Probably just more mediocrity that would have been swept underneath the table, maybe.
Yeah, we probably would have gotten a season or two, and it probably would have been canceled.
Mm.
Yeah,
That's a
but
good point.
also, it's this would have been taking a series of this would have been taking the place of Sliders, which lasted for one more series on Fox before they canceled it and Sci-Fi picked it up. But yeah, then there's the Roseanne debacle. Roseanne, of course, was the biggest sitcom on TV at the time. And the week before was the wedding of Darlene and David, two of the main characters.
Mm-hmm.
And the episode ended with Dan not feeling well and then clutching his arm and passing out. So, you can imagine that anybody that even remotely was interested in the show would have been glued to their TV that night.
Mm-hmm.
It was a huge, huge moment in that show. So, um, 90, I'm not going to say 90, but a good chunk of the TV watching community out there that night was watching Roseanne, which was airing at the exact same time as this. So people were watching that and taping this. And taping, of course, does not give you ratings.
And if it wasn't Roseanne, it would have been another show with a huge following. Eventually, like if one of Buffy's biggest episodes could have easily killed this.
Yeah, I think another problem was I think this came out during sweeps.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, so everybody was having their big episodes.
So it's kind of hard to get noticed either way. It was just a really bad time to try and release it, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
They should have waited a month or two.
Yes, but this was Fox, and we know Fox doesn't give a shit.
No, they don't. Firefly, they don't give a shit.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Other than trying to keep the rights so that the creators can't make any more Firefly.
Although,
Yeah,
to be fair,
this is an early example of Fox bastardry, really.
Mm-hmm.
right. And remember, the reason they didn't make a Doctor Who, have a Doctor Who season instead of the Sliders wasn't because this was so had such poor ratings or anything. It was because Sliders was actually owned by, or was it owned or whatever it was, by Fox, whereas
No,
Doctor Who
that is
wasn't.
not the case, Bill. That was literally
Everything
what
I've
was on
seen
the
said that was the case.
everything that was literally what was on the table at Fox. Was that if this had rated well, Fox was willing to cancel Sliders and go with this. They pretty much said in an interview, in not so many words, they pretty much said that was what was on the line.
That if this other sci-fi show was better and got better ratings, then we'll go with this new sci-fi show
If they
rather
had
than
gotten
continue the other
more-
one that's dying.
Yeah, if they'd gotten more approval ratings, because the previous season of Sliders had not gone over well.
Well, the
And
previous
Jerry
seasons-
O'Connell had already been making motions that he didn't want to do anymore.
Mm-hmm. I was also about to say, there's that, and I think also they kind of made their unofficial Daleks, didn't they? The dimensional sliding people that are invaders and such. I forget all the details. I can't remember
Yeah,
names
well, they
either.
were more cannibals, but yeah,
Still,
they'd got
dimensional
they'd got their
hopping
patch.
race that kills entire dimensions. Yeah, to keep re-attacking Earth. But anyway, I guess that's the end of the episode then.
Yep, that's pretty much it.
Yep.
4 of us made a vote. 2 for 3, 2 for 2.5 gives us an average of 2.75 for this episode, or for this particular
Story.
Definitely the lowest rated regeneration story we have gotten to yet.
Yep.
Not without trying, but yeah.
Now we've done Parting of the Ways, or not? Parting of the Ways.
Yep, we've done
Correct?
Parting of the Ways
Mhm.
previously.
So next week we are going to do End of Time.
Yep. And of course,
Okay.
we've also done Night of the Doctor already, and Day
Yep.
of the Doctor already, which sort of counts as
So
regeneration.
that'll
Yeah.
be our final entry in the endings portion of this, which means in 2 weeks, we will come with the telesnap of power of the Daleks. Correct?
Yep.
That'll be Troughton's first. We've already done an Unearthly Child, so
Yep.
we'll do Power of the Daleks and then start moving forward again from there. Power, Spearhead, Robot, Castrovalva,
Twin Dilemma.
Twin Dilemma, Time and the Ronnie, which we didn't cover here because of that. And then we're going to skip this movie again because there's really nothing else from McGann. And then we'll do Rose and the Christmas Invasion. And we've done the 11th Hour, so it'll be Rose and the Christmas
Right.
Invasion.
Mhm.
And then we'll take stock of things from there.
Yep.
So tune in next time. Are we going to continue to try to do Friday night here?
I believe so, as long as it continues to work for everybody.
More or
I'm
less.
off on Friday. Next Friday, I
Okay.
should say.
Okay.
All right. So then, yeah, tune in next Friday about the same time, same channel, and we will discuss David Tennant's End of Time, Part 1 and Part 2.
Yep.
Yep.
Mhm.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.